Chapter 1471, Fiery King. Chapter 1471, Fiery King. My man. Fiery King said that I'm his man. Jian Wushuang was caught by surprise. He had not been in Sky Sword Prison for long. He had not came across Fiery King before, nor had he been an appendage to Fiery King. But then Fiery King said that he was his man. More interestingly, from Blood Emperor and Heartless King's expressions, they seemed to know that he was Fiery King's man. What was going on? Fiery King. Heartless King looked at Fiery King. I am invited by Blood Emperor. He gave me benefits while I only looked for Jian Wushuang on his behalf. Before this, I never knew that he was your man. I had no idea either, Blood Emperor said. I don't care if you knew or not. In short, you already took action against him. Fiery King was raging with anger. He was really angry at that moment. When he came to the void nearby and saw Blood Emperor and Heartless King were fighting against Jian Wushuang, he didn't bother, nor did he intend to get involved. After all, a massacre in Sky Sword Prison was originally crazy. Jian Wushuang wasn't related to him at all, so his death had nothing to do with him. However, at the crucial moment, Jian Wushuang performed various trump cards and caused an opening in the consciousness prison. Among the trump cards that Jian Wushuang performed, it included the technique from Scarlet Kingdom. The moment he saw Jian Wushuang perform the secret skill of Scarlet Kingdom, Fiery King couldn't just sit and watch. As you already took action against my man, you have to pay the price for what you have done. A cold voice was heard from Fiery King's mouth. The next moment, Fiery King immediately launched an attack. Rumble! Fiery King's figure expanded instantly and suddenly became a giant that was 100 zhang tall and covered in flame. It was a flaming giant. Wow! The flaming giant stepped hard and kicked in the direction of Blood Emperor and Heartless King. On the way, a churning crimson flame swept out mightily. It suddenly covered the surrounding void in an instant. In the 10,000-mile range, it became a crimson sea. The flaming giant that Fiery King became was the only ruler of the Crimson Sea. Looking at the sight, Jian Wushuang's eyes stared with his eyes wide opened. This Scarlet Kingdom. Scarlet Kingdom. Yes, Fiery King was performing Scarlet Kingdom's technique then. The difference compared to Jian Wushuang's was that the Scarlet Kingdom technique that Fiery King performed was at a peak level. It could cover a total expanse of 10,000 miles. As for Jian Wushuang, even if he performed Scarlet Kingdom with all his power, the coverage wouldn't be more than 10 miles. Scarlet Kingdom was a precious secret skill of Lineage of Scarlet. Fiery King is an expert from Lineage of Scarlet. Jian Wushuang was surprised. He finally found out why Fiery King said that he was his man. It turned out that the two of them belonged to Lineage of Scarlet. Rumble. A terrifying rumble sounded across the battlefield. Even if Blood Emperor and Heartless King, who were swallowed by the Crimson Sea of Fire, were to work together, they would still be in a fix from the ferocious attack of the flaming giant that Fiery King transformed into. In a short while, they were trembling in the balance and were dispirited. Consider this a lesson that I teach you. If there's a next time, Fiery King's loud voice was heard across the universe, and the crimson sea of fire that covered the surroundings slowly stopped spreading. In the sea of fire, Blood Emperor and Heartless King glared at Fiery King in anger. Let's go! The two of them turned and left immediately, without hesitation. The universe quickly calmed down. The flame on Fiery King slowly dispersed, and he returned to his original look of a brawny man. He suddenly plunged forward and appeared before Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang. Fiery King looked excited when he looked at Jian Wushuang. Thank you, Mr. Fiery King, for lending a helping hand. Jian Wushuang quickly thanked him. You are from Lineage of Scarlet, a junior to me. Of course I have to save you. Plus, even if I don't, you should be able to escape, right? Fiery King laughed. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrow but did not deny it. True. He had already freed himself from Heartless King's consciousness prison, and he had already performed the secret skill of dragon blood. Even if Fiery King didn't appear, he would be able to run away too. Let's go. Find a place and let's have a chat, Fiery King smiled. Very soon, the two of them found a remote cave dwelling in Darkness Mountain. In the cave dwelling, Jian Wushuang and Fiery King sat opposite one another. Jian Wushuang, where did you cultivate the secret skill from Scarlet Kingdom? Fiery King asked. At Snow Kingdom in Dayu World on Scarlet Island, Jian Wushuang briefly explained the process of him cultivating Scarlet Kingdom. After he heard Jian Wushuang's description, Fiery King nodded his head and revealed a gratified expression. Luckily, although lineage of Scarlet is on the decline, it has never once been destroyed. Mr. Fiery King, would you be the creator of Lineage of Scarlet? Jian Wushuang asked. Back when he was on Scarlet Island, the master of Scarlet Island once told him the history of Lineage of Scarlet. He said that Lineage of Scarlet was created by a top-notch expert above Universe God. Lineage of Scarlet was once brilliant, but it was in decline later on. Creator? I guess so, Fiery King nodded faintly. As expected, Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. Then, Fiery King started telling him the story. Many years ago, I created Lineage of Scarlet in the kingdom, and the kingdom was one of the 72 kingdoms that Sky Sword Mountain controlled. Then, because there was a real god, me, who took charge, Lineage of Scarlet was considered a great force in the Holy Kingdom. There was almost no one who dared to provoke us, but then, because of an accident, I offended Sky Sword Mountain, and it could be said that I offended Sky Sword Mountain greatly. Then I understood that Lineage of Scarlet was in danger. Hence, I made a prompt decision and ordered the experts of Lineage of Scarlet to immediately leave the Holy Kingdom, while I also opted to run away. However, Sky Sword Mountain was too powerful. In the end, I was arrested by experts from Sky Sword Mountain and imprisoned here in Sky Sword Prison. Fortunately, Lineage of Scarlet escaped. Fiery King smiled. Jian Wushuang sighed. The 72 holy kingdoms that Sky Sword Mountain controlled, and the distance to Snow Kingdom was very far. Scarlet Kingdom ran away from the 72 holy kingdoms into Snow Kingdom and steadied its foundation in an ordinary world in Snow Kingdom. They really ran very far away. I thought I'd forever be imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison and never meet any junior of Lineage of Scarlet. I never thought that I'd be able to meet you today. Fiery King looked at Jian Wushuang with a smile on his face. Chapter 1472 Hopeless. Chapter 1472 Hopeless. To be able to see a junior from the Lineage of Scarlet in my remaining years and know that Lineage of Scarlet still exists in eternal chaotic world, I, Fiery King, can die with no regrets. Fiery King smiled and said. Jian Wushuang could understand Fiery King's feelings. Over the years, he had been imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison and he was cut off from the outside world. He wasn't sure how Lineage of Scarlet was doing and whether if it was destroyed. He had been worried. Then, when he finally met Jian Wushuang, he found out that Lineage of Scarlet still existed and had already steadied their foundation in Snow Kingdom. Fiery King could finally feel at ease. Mr. Fiery King, don't worry. With your ability, there will definitely be a day when you can leave Sky Sword Prison, Jian Wushuang said. Leave? Fiery King shook his head slowly. It isn't that easy to leave Sky Sword Prison. I'm afraid there won't be a day where I leave here. Why? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. From Jian Wushuang's point of view, Fiery King was widely recognized as the top expert. Even the other three kings had to bow down before him. Such an expert, if he were to carry out a major massacre, should be able to kill many experts. Through accumulation over the years, it would just be a matter of time until he fulfilled the criteria to leave the prison. Jian Wushuang, you're only a universe god. To a universe god, as long as you kill 100 of universe god of the same level or 10 real gods, you can leave. However, for a real god, the criteria is different. Fiery King smiled faintly as he explained. A real god who wants to leave Sky Sword Prison has to kill 1,000 experts, and they must not take their levels into consideration. In other words, even if you kill real gods of the same level, it will be counted as one. You know everyone's defense power in Sky Sword Prison is very high, they aren't that easy to kill. Plus, there are not many experts in Sky Sword Prison. It is too difficult for a real god to kill 1,000 experts in the prison. It's really difficult, but there's a string of hope, Jian Wushuang said. Yes, there's a string of hope. The hope is to accumulate over the years. Even if I only kill one expert every 10,000 years, I'd be able to fulfill the criteria in 10 million years. However, the mentioned criteria was for ordinary real god, but I am one of the 4 kings in Sky Sword Prison. As kings, our criteria to leave is even tougher. Fiery King said. Tougher? Could it be that they asked you to kill 10,000 experts? Jian Wushuang asked. 10,000? No, as kings, we have to kill 1,000, but the 1,000 that we kill have to be real gods. Fiery King said. What? Jian Wushuang was surprised. Kill real gods. Kill 1,000 real gods, then he could leave Sky Sword Prison. How could real gods be killed so easily? Plus, comparing real gods to universe gods, the numbers were much less. Since the birth of Sky Sword Prison, including all real gods that had died and left, he reckoned there weren't more than 300 of them. There weren't even more than 300 real gods who had been imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison. How could the 4 kings kill 1,000 real gods? Jian Wushuang, now you know why I felt hopeless about leaving Sky Sword Prison? Fiery King smiled faintly, but Jian Wushuang saw the smile and found it extremely sad. Jian Wushuang grew distressed. At the same time, he pitied Fiery King and the other 3 kings. The 4 kings in Sky Sword Prison looked so enchanting and were treated as overlords in Sky Sword Prison. But in actual fact, the 4 kings were much sadder than any other experts in Sky Sword Prison. After all, although it was dangerous for the other experts to stay in Sky Sword Prison and the probability of them falling wasn't low, they stood a chance to leave Sky Sword Prison after all. However, the 4 kings seemed to not stand a chance at all. To kill 1,000 real gods. Even Jian Wushuang himself reckoned that it would be hopeless. Of course, if we 4 kings want to leave Sky Sword Prison, there is another possibility, Fiery King said. How? Jian Wushuang turned to look at Fiery King. Break through and become the 2nd stage of real god. Fiery God explained, the stage is second to Almighty. It is far stronger than ordinary 1st stage real god. Experts at that stage, even Sky Sword Prison can't imprison them. Hence, the owner of Sky Sword Mountain once said that if we were to break through to that stage, we could leave as well. It's a pity that it isn't that easy to break through to that stage. Eternal chaotic world, there are so many real god experts. But just how many of them could really take that leap? At least, from what I know, I am hopeless in this life. Not only myself, but the other 3 kings don't have any hope either. Jian Wushuang's face grew grave as he nodded in agreement. Alright, forget about that. Let's talk about you. Fiery King looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, why are you imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison? Why are you chased after by Blood Emperor and Heartless King? Jian Wushuang thought for a while and briefly told Fiery King the story. Oh, lineage of Star? You are a disciple of Star Palace? Fiery King looked at Jian Wushuang in surprise. He had once wandered in 10 cultivation sanctuaries alone. He had heard of lineage of Star and disciple of Star Palace before. Your higher up in lineage of Star is quite interesting. He sent you to murder in Sky Sword Mountain. It was obviously to provoke the owner of Sky Sword Mountain. Fiery King laughed. No one denied it. Jian Wushuang pouted, then briefly explained why Blood Emperor was after him. Holocaust sect. You mean Blood Emperor is Holocaust sect's man? Fiery King's gaze turned cold as he stood up. I am only guessing, but it should be that, Jian Wushuang answered. He believed in King of Venomous Worm's judgment. Plus, from his viewpoint, that was the only reason for Blood Emperor to come after him. Humph, the bastard from Holocaust sect. Fiery King's voice was cold. Previously, when I was wandering in Eternal Chaotic World, I once saw Holocaust sect's doings. Their vicious formation refined all living things in 21 worlds in less than 1,000 years. Back then, in the Holy Kingdom, it stirred up a great commotion and even got the owner of Sky Sword Mountain involved. It is said that the owner of Sky Sword Prison personally investigated the case. However, the people from Holocaust sect ran away too quickly and didn't fall in the hands of the owner of Sky Sword Mountain. I never thought that the Sky Sword Mountain that we are currently in had people from Holocaust sect too, and that he would be one of the 4 kings. Chapter 1473, 3,000 Years. Chapter 1473, 3,000 Years. Holocaust sect, in eternal chaotic world, was hated by everyone. Especially by Fiery King, who once watched the merciless act of Holocaust sect with his own eyes, and loathed them even more. It's a pity that it isn't eternal chaotic world, but Sky Sword Prison. Even if we find out about Blood Emperor's true identity, we can't do anything about him, Fiery King continued. The experts in Sky Sword Prison are all prisoners. They have trouble even keeping themselves alive. Who would be bothered if Blood Emperor was one of the experts from Holocaust sect? As for myself, even if I intend to take action against Blood Emperor, under the limitation of divine power, I can only suppress him and torture him. But it's impossible for me to kill him. Fiery King was publicly acknowledged as the #1 expert in Sky Sword Prison. Even if it was him, under the condition where his divine power was limited, he couldn't kill a king. Jian Wushuang, if Blood Emperor is really after you because of your blood-killing plate armor, you have to be careful. Fiery King looked at Jian Wushuang and exhorted. Blood-killing plate armor, to us ordinary universe gods, isn't very useful. However, to Blood Emperor, who is from Holocaust sect, it is very useful. If he were to get blood-killing plate armor, he could figure out a way to enhance the power of blood-killing plate armor over the years. He could level up blood-killing plate armor into blood-killing king armor. Once he obtains blood-killing king armor, I dare say that his fighting power should be able to reach the 2nd stage of real god. By then, he could leave Sky Sword Prison. And this should be his only chance to leave Sky Sword Prison. He definitely won't let the chance slip. Hence, even if I just taught him a lesson earlier and warned him, he will definitely not hesitate to take action against you if he has a chance. I understand, Jian Wushuang nodded. He also knew that blood-killing plate armor was useful to Blood Emperor. Before blood-killing plate armor, Blood Emperor definitely wouldn't be bothered by Fiery King's threat. After all, although Fiery King was strong, he couldn't kill him. At first, I intended to train myself at Blood Emperor's Darkness Mountain for a while. Then, when my flowing light phantom reaches the 2nd level, I will start my massacre plan. However, it seems like my plan has to be delayed. Jian Wushuang's face grew solemn. Blood Emperor had his eyes on Jian Wushuang. If he were to continue training in Sky Sword Prison or launch a massacre plan, Blood Emperor might find him again. Then, he wasn't sure if he could keep himself alive in a fight against Blood Emperor. Jian Wushuang, if you want to train, why not just return to Fiery Prison with me? Fiery King said. Fiery Prison? Jian Wushuang was surprised. We, the 4 kings, each have our territories in Sky Sword Prison. Blood Emperor's territory is here in Darkness Mountain, while mine is in Fiery Prison. It is much bigger than Darkness Mountain and there are more experts there too. Plus, it is my territory. You can fight against anyone as training. Regardless of how much Blood Emperor is dying to get the blood-killing plate armor from you, he doesn't have the guts to barge into Fiery Prison to hunt you down. Plus, he can't hunt you down anyway, Fiery King suggested. Great idea. Jian Wushuang beamed with joy. What he lacked was training. There was still room for improvement in terms of his power. Once he improved his power, he would be confident enough to fight against Blood Emperor. By then, even if he were to wander in Blood Emperor's territory, Darkness Mountain, Blood Emperor could only sit and watch but couldn't do anything about him. If so, let's depart immediately. Jian Wushuang immediately departed to Fiery Prison with Fiery King. Fiery Prison was just like rolling hills, but most of the hills were made of volcanoes. At that very moment, among the scorching hot volcanoes, Jian Wushuang stood with his sword while there was a short elderly in red armor before him. The short elderly held a red hammer in each hand while he revealed a smile on his face. Jian Wushuang, did you offend Mr. Fiery King? Mr. Fiery King sent us a message that, if we were to ever come across you, we have to try our best to kill you. Oh! Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and wasn't surprised. After all, it was a requirement that Fiery King had suggested. As he wanted to train himself in fiery prison, it naturally had to be a life-and-death challenge. If the experts in fiery prison were to hold back their power, the training wouldn't be as effective. Want to kill me? I shall see if you have the ability to, Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. Kill. The short elderly didn't bullshit anymore. There was a chilly gleam in his eyes as he charged forward. Hong. The two red hammers pierced the air and slammed down toward Jian Wushuang with boundless power. Jian Wushuang immediately wielded his sword to block. From that day onwards, Jian Wushuang wandered in fiery prison alone and exchanged blows with many experts in fiery prison. There were more experts in fiery prison than in Darkness Mountain, especially experts on the second level. There were a total of 8 in fiery prison itself. The others were made up of many real gods and universe gods on the peak of the 3rd level. These people were suitable for Jian Wushuang to train himself on. Plus, the experts didn't know Jian Wushuang's relationship with Fiery King. They even thought Jian Wushuang had offended Fiery King, which explained why Fiery King was so angry that he wanted him dead. Hence, the experts in fiery prison who came across Jian Wushuang tried their best to kill Jian Wushuang. But Jian Wushuang's defense power was extremely strong and he could barely deal with them. During his training, Jian Wushuang's power was increasing gradually. The years flew past. In the blink of an eye, it had been 3,000 years. For the past 3,000 years, Jian Wushuang had been fighting vigorously with all the experts in fiery prison. In addition to the 1,300 years that he had been in Sky Sword Prison, he had been imprisoned for 4,300 years. 4,300 years was an extremely long time to Jian Wushuang. In fiery prison, on the top of a huge volcano, on the border of the volcano crater, Jian Wushuang sat in silence, alone. He slowly opened his eyes and revealed a joyous expression. 3,000 years. I have been cultivating and comprehending in fiery prison for 3,000 years. I have finally comprehended the 3rd image of the painting of understanding sword via reincarnation. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly while he felt a despondent mood. He was a person of quick comprehension and he possessed high innate advantage in terms of comprehension towards reincarnation doctrine. He didn't use too much time to fully comprehend the first 2 images of the painting of understanding sword via reincarnation. However, he had used a total of 3,000 years to comprehend the 3rd image, and he had many related trainings in the past 3,000 years. Chapter 1474, Visiting Darkness Mountain Again. Chapter 1474, Visiting Darkness Mountain Again. Heaven Way is unfathomable. Furthermore, the deeper you dig into it, the more difficult it is to comprehend. Jian Wushuang, you are only a universe god after all, and you are only a universe god in the 2nd heaven. To be able to comprehend the 3rd image of the painting of understanding sword via reincarnation in 3,000 years is already very impressive. You must know that an ordinary real god might not even reach your level in 300,000 years or 30,000 years, let alone 3,000 years. King of Venomous Worm's voice rang in Jian Wushuang's head. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. He knew that a universe god was different from a real god. Once he reached the level of a real god, it would be much easier to comprehend Heaven Way as compared to a universe god. A universe god who could comprehend a slight bit of power of Heaven Way was already considered a top genius. To a real god, comprehending power of Heaven Way was something common. Although it took me longer, I have reached this step regardless. Jian Wushuang smiled. The step was referring to passing through the 1st level of Doctrine Palace. Jian Wushuang, who had fully comprehended the 3rd image of the painting of understanding sword via reincarnation, had possessed the power to pass through the first level of Doctrine Palace. In other words, his comprehension of power of Heaven Way alone wasn't any weaker than the four kings in Sky Sword Prison. In terms of divine power, they were on the same level as well due to the fact that real gods were restricted. Then, compared to the four kings, he reckoned their only difference was their created unique skills. Jian Wushuang was only a universe god in the second heaven after all. The highest limit that he could reach was to create a beginner real god unique skill. However, it was different for real god. The unique skills created by the four kings in Sky Sword Prison were much stronger. I am definitely weaker in terms of unique skill. However, I have many trump cards and techniques. On top of that, my divine body is strong. It should be sufficient to fight against Blood Emperor. So, I can begin my massacre plan very soon. There was light shimmering in Jian Wushuang's eyes. Over the years, he had been wandering in fiery prison for training and never once left because of the threatening existence of Blood Emperor. He never had the confidence to fight Blood Emperor, which led to a temporary hold on his massacre plan. However, it was different then. On that day, Jian Wushuang had found Fiery King. You're ready to leave fiery prison? Where do you intend to go? To wander around and hunt down experts? Fiery King looked at Jian Wushuang. No, I do not intend to wander around. I plan to head over to Darkness Mountain directly. Jian Wushuang said. Darkness Mountain, Blood Emperor's enemy's nest? Fiery King's face grew solemn as he looked at Jian Wushuang. You seem to be confident in dealing with Blood Emperor? Yes, Jian Wushuang smiled. In Sky Sword Prison, there shouldn't be anyone who has the power to kill me. Not even Fiery King yourself, I'm afraid. Oh, so confident? Fiery King raised his eyebrows. If so, I will not say more. You already have my communication token. If you run into any trouble in Darkness Mountain, send me a message. All right, Jian Wushuang nodded. Then he immediately departed. Fiery King looked at Jian Wushuang's shadow and sighed with emotion. 3,000 years ago, when this boy fought Blood Emperor, it was difficult for him to stay alive by giving his all. But today, 3,000 years later, he is so confident that he can stay alive before Blood Emperor and even me. TSK, his speed of improvement is terrifyingly fast. My lineage of Scarlet has an impressive young man. I hope that this young man stands a chance to leave Sky Sword Prison. Sky Sword Prison, Darkness Mountain. It had been 3,000 years since Jian Wushuang last came to Darkness Mountain, which was Blood Emperor's territory. In the void above all rolling hills, Jian Wushuang in a crimson robe, carrying a sword behind him, was walking forward slowly. 3,000 years ago, Blood Emperor and the experts under his command drove me to a miserable corner. I hid in the cave dwelling underground for 100 years but didn't dare to pop up. In the end, he even asked Heartless King to look for me. If it wasn't for Fiery King's arrival, even if I could have escaped Blood Emperor and Heartless King's chase, I could only have found a place to hide again. The debt from 3,000 years ago, Jian Wushuang is coming to take revenge today. Jian Wushuang's gaze was cold and his soul power spread across wantonly. In 2 days, Jian Wushuang's soul power detected an expert's existence. Universe God. Jian Wushuang towering in the void, and he could clearly feel an expert in a cave dwelling in a mountain afar with his soul power. The expert was just a universe god and he was only on the 3rd level. Although this universe god has good defense power, it's a piece of cake for me to kill him with my current power. However, he's only a universe god. Even if I killed him, it won't be of much help to me. Jian Wushuang shook his head and left. He was also only a universe god. The criteria for him to leave Sky Sword Prison was that he either kill 100 universe gods or kill 10 real gods. If it were like before, when Jian Wushuang had not had enough power, he could only figure out a way to kill 100 universe gods in order to bail himself out from Sky Sword Prison. But now, he had absolute power and he was leaning towards the latter option. Killing 1 real god is equal to killing 10 universe gods. It is obviously a worthy choice. Jian Wushuang smiled and continued to search through Darkness Mountain. his soul power was a great advantage that he had. Taking advantage of his soul power, it was too easy for him to find those experts in Darkness Mountain. In a few days' time, Jian Wushuang had found a real god. Real God Hui Yuan, on the 3rd level in Sky Sword Prison, a real god that has yet to grasp Heaven Way. Plus, he is an expert under Blood Emperor's command. 3,000 years ago, he was among the real gods who were searching for me within the 1,000,000 miles range. Jian Wushuang smirked coldly and instantly plunged towards the marsh where real god Huiyuan was at. In the huge marshland that was up to 100 miles wide, real god Huiyuan had opened up a cave dwelling below the marshland. Over the years, real god Huiyuan had been staying there. It was a beautiful cave dwelling. It was spacious and there were various decorations. They were all brought in from outside the prison by real god Huiyuan himself. It was rather luxuriantly decorated. On an exquisite stone bed in the middle of the cave dwelling, real god Huiyuan was lying casually with wine and food by his side. All that was missing were a few beauties and maidservants serving him. If he had that too, no one would have been able to tell that he was a prisoner. Chapter 1475, Real God Huiyuan. Chapter 1475, Real God Huiyuan. Sigh, I should not have done anything to that royal disciple secretly for such a small benefit back then. Otherwise I, Huiyuan, would not have been locked up in this Sky Sword prison. Moreover, this imprisonment is for 8 million years. Real God Huiyuan sobbed as he lay down. Back then, he was considered a well-respected overlord in a region of the Holy Kingdom. However, due to a rash decision, he had been imprisoned in the Sky Sword prison for a total of 8 million years. Initially, real God Huiyuan still had hoped that he could accomplish the criterion of the Sky Sword prison to kill 1,000 universe gods and then leave the prison. However, he soon realized that meeting such criterion was merely a futile hope. Not to mention leaving after achieving the criterion, it was already very difficult for him to keep himself alive in the prison. After all, to some of the universe gods who stood at the top in the Sky Sword prison, it would be a lot easier to kill a real god like him than to kill 10 universe gods. As such, it was natural that some universe gods had their eyes on him, such as the 2 demonic universe gods who were of the 2nd level. Under conditions where his divine power was restricted, he was not the 2 demonic universe gods' opponent. Moreover, just keeping himself alive was difficult. As such, he chose to be under the command of the Blood Emperor. Although he lived his life under poor circumstances for 8 million years, at the very least, he would still be able to keep himself alive. I don't even know when I, Huiyuan, will be able to leave this shitty place. Real God Huiyuan was swearing secretly. However, at that moment, boom! A wave of tyrannical divine power erupted abruptly and struck the swamp that he was in directly. In no time, the whole swamp was lifted up. Furthermore, the impressive divine power also spread mercilessly to the cave that he was in. The cave that real God Huiyuan was in broke into pieces instantly and he plunged out immediately. Real God Huiyuan appeared at the higher end of the void. As he looked at the swamp that had been completely flattened, he became extremely furious. Jian Wushuang, is that you? Real God Huiyuan stared at the blood-robed youth who was standing in front of him. Real God Huiyuan, I trust you have been well, Jian Wushuang giggled. How dare you? Even though you know that the Blood Emperor is looking everywhere to kill you, you still dare to come to the Darkness Mountain. Moreover, you also destroyed my cave. Do you really think that with the Fiery King as your supporter, no one in the Sky Sword prison will do anything against you? Real God Huiyuan shouted angrily. The Fiery King is indeed giving me support. However, I have come to the Darkness Mountain alone this time around. Since the Blood Emperor wishes to kill me so much, by all means bring it on, Jian Wushuang laughed. Very good, I shall send a message to the Blood Emperor now. Real God Huiyuan took out a token immediately. Jian Wushuang crossed his arms and stood at his position. He did not interfere and allowed real God Huiyuan to send the message. After a short while, have you finished sending your message? Jian Wushuang's laughter could be heard. Real God Huiyuan stored his token. However, his eyes had already squinted slightly. This Jian Wushuang did not stop me even though he saw me sending a message to the Blood Emperor. Could it be that he isn't scared due to his strong backing? Real God Hui Yuan, since you have finished sending your message, isn't it about time that you think about your own situation? Jian Wushuang chuckled. But could it be that you still wish to use us real gods as your whetstones, just like before? Real God Hui Yuan's voice sounded grave. Whetstone? No, my tough training is more or less over. Now I must think of a way to leave the Sky Sword prison. You should know the criterion to leave as well. As I am a universe god, I must either kill 100 universe gods or 10 real gods to leave. As for you, you are my first target, Jian Wushuang grinned. Kill me? By yourself? Real God Hui Yuan sneered. What a joke. I am a real god. In the Sky Sword prison, apart from the 4 kings, who could kill me? Before this, when I first came to the Sky Sword prison, I also met a person known as Universe God Long Xiu. He was more confident than you and claimed that in the whole Sky Sword prison, apart from the Heartless King, no one could kill him. However, he died later on and he was killed by me, Jian Wushuang said apathetically. You killed Universe God Long Xiu? Real God Hui Yuan's eyes narrowed. Universe God Long Xiu's name was famous in the Sky Sword prison. Although he was only a universe god, his ability to keep himself alive was way greater than a real god like himself. However, he had died at the hands of Jian Wushuang. You shall join Universe God Long Xiu as well. Jian Wushuang's eyes glowed with murderous intent. Buzz! Majestic sword essence rose at once. When the foot of Jian Wushuang, who was standing quietly in the void, originally moved, 9 shadows burst forth in a split second at the same time. The 9 shadows pierced through the void easily and appeared in front of real God Hui Yuan. This is Universe God Long Xiu's secret skill of martial art movement? Real God Hui Yuan was shocked. However, what followed after that was a roar. No matter what, you are merely a universe god. Do you think that I will be afraid of you? Boom. Majestic divine power also burst forth from real God Hui Yuan's body. All the hair on his body turned scarlet. His eyes turned stringent and his body became bigger. It was as though he had become a real fire ape. Moreover, he was holding a completely red stone rod. The stone rod was 3 meters long and it was as thick as a person's arm. When real God Hui Yuan swung the stone rod, he unleashed an earth-shaking power instantly. Go to hell! Real God Hui Yuan's face distorted. Under the condition of his divine power being restricted, he had already unleashed all his power, unique skills and secret skills to their maximum. All his power was converged into the stone rod alone. As for Jian Wushuang, who was in front of him, with a flash of the 9 shadows, figures appeared and wielded the Blood Mountain sword. Crimson light. Swish! It was so fast that it was as if a crimson-colored lightning had appeared in midair. It was so fast that it was ridiculous. The crimson-colored sword light and the boundless void. In the places which the sword light passed, a great amount of blood-colored sword light was left behind and did not dissipate even after a long time. In no time, the sword light collided head-on with real God Hui Yuan's red stone rod. Both Jian Wushuang and real God Hui Yuan had unleashed the unique skills of real gods. Moreover, the divine power that both of them had released were about equal. However, what was different was that the sword light that Jian Wushuang had executed contained the power of reincarnation. Moreover, it was different from 3,000 years ago. At present, his comprehension of the reincarnation doctrine had already achieved the standards of the Doctrine Palace's first level. Hence, when the power of reincarnation was used, its power was at least 10 times stronger than before. This was still in comparison to the past. As for real God Hui Yuan, he had never possessed the slightest bit of the power of Heaven Wei. This collision. Puff! Real God Hui Yuan coughed out a big mouthful of blood straight away. His blood covered his hair, causing his hair, which was already scarlet in color, to become even redder. The aura on real God Hui Yuan's body also decreased by a huge amount immediately. He retreated in a pathetic state, and it was only after quite a while that he managed to regain his posture. Die! As soon as Jian Wushuang's body moved, 9 shadows appeared. He did not give real god Hui Yuan any time to catch his breath. Chapter 1476, Massacre began. Chapter 1476, Massacre began. 1 stroke. He caused me severe injury with just 1 stroke? How could he be that powerful? Real god Hui Yuan was still dumbfounded. One should know that he was a real god. Although he was the weakest kind of real god and his divine power was restrained, he was at the peak of the 3rd level in Sky Sword Prison. Under the circumstances of them fighting head-on, the sword principle that Jian Wushuang had performed broke his stick and heavily injured him simultaneously. What kind of power was that? Even out of the real gods who were at the peak of the 2nd level, there was barely anyone who had such power. Run, hurry up and run. Real god Hui Yuan was in panic mode. He had entirely lost his courage to fight against Jian Wushuang. After all, his defensive power was ordinary. Jian Wushuang had caused him severe injury with 1 stroke. If he were to perform another few strokes, he would definitely be dead. Jian Wushuang smirked at the sight of real god Hui Yuan running away. Then, the divine power in his body started churning within. The secret of dragon blood. The secret skill could be used for making an escape. It could also be used to hunt someone down. Even though it was only the 1st layer of the secret skill of dragon blood, it had increased Jian Wushuang's speed 10-fold, and the expense of divine power was within Jian Wushuang's endurance. In combination with the secret skill of flowing light phantom, Jian Wushuang caught up to real god Hui Yuan in a short time. Then, he instantly performed the sword principle. No! Real god Hui Yuan let out a shrill cry and tried his best to withstand the attack. However, in a short while, a terrifying power made real god Hui Yuan's divine body quiver madly. In the end, it collapsed. Then, Jian Wushuang buried real god Hui Yuan's life nuclei in oblivion. Real god Hui Yuan, who had been imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison for a total of 8 million years, died. In the void, Jian Wushuang stood there, looking at real god Hui Yuan's cold body, and he felt extremely emotional. Real god, he is a real god. I killed a real god. There was an unprecedented light in Jian Wushuang's eyes. Humph. However, he was only a real god of the bottom rank. So what if you killed him? There's nothing to be excited about. Plus, this real god is in Sky Sword Prison where his divine power was restrained. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to kill him, King of Venomous Worm's voice was heard in his head. Of course, even when we're out of Sky Sword Prison, a real god with ordinary divine power and unique skill like real god Hui Yuan, and never once comprehended the power of Heaven Wei, you could be evenly matched with them with your current power. Jian Wushuang smiled. In Sky Sword Prison, the divine power of a real god was restrained. It did cut down the real god's power drastically. However, even if real god Hui Yuan could have erupted perfectly, he could really be matched evenly with his current power. I killed real god Hui Yuan. Blood Emperor should be the first to receive the news. I wonder what his response will be, Jian Wushuang muttered. However, regardless of his response, I will not be afraid of him. Plus, real god Hui Yuan is just the beginning. Then, let's begin the massacre. With boundless rage, Jian Wushuang continued to start hunting for his prey in Darkness Mountain. In the middle of Darkness Mountain, in the Crimson Castle. The elderly with blade-like eyebrows in a crimson long robe, Blood Emperor, sat on his throne in the utmost position of the hall. Before him, a lady in green stood politely. Jian Wushuang, he came to my Darkness Mountain again? He has guts. Blood Emperor looked cold. Could it be because he thought I wouldn't dare to kill him with Fiery King backing him up? Blood Emperor sneered at the thought. Although Fiery King was strong and he wasn't his match, he only maintained a respectful distance but was not afraid or fearful of him. After all, Fiery King couldn't kill him. But Jian Wushuang had blood-killing plate armor on him. It would help him to increase his power tremendously. Plus, it was his only hope to leave Sky Sword Prison. Hee, as Jian Wushuang is so arrogant, that'd be great. I am worried that I will have no opportunity to kill him. Blood Emperor smirked coldly and lifted his head. Go, immediately send Hui Yuan a message. Let him figure out a way to drag Jian Wushuang over. Even if he can't delay him, watch him for me. I am coming after him personally. Yes, the lady in green nodded and immediately sent real god Hui Yun a message. After a while, the lady in green creased her eyebrows. Why? Blood Emperor asked. I have no idea what happened, but real god Hui Yuan didn't reply, the lady in green said. No reply? Could he be fighting against Jian Wushuang? Continue to send him messages, Blood Emperor ordered. The lady in green continued to send messages. 2 hours later, the lady in green stopped messaging. The atmosphere in the hall grew creepy. It has been 2 hours. Even if he was fighting Jian Wushuang, they wouldn't be in a fight for so long and didn't even reply to any messages. However, he really didn't reply at all. There's only one possibility, which is that real god Hui Yun has already died. Blood Emperor squinted his eyes. If he was dead, he naturally wouldn't reply. That was the only explanation. Hui Yuan died? Could it be Fiery King? Blood Emperor creased his eyebrows and then he shook his head very quickly. No way. Fiery King is widely recognized as the top expert in Sky Sword Prison. He is reliant on his own identity. Hui Yuan never once provoked him on his own. It's unlikely that he would lower himself to take action against Hui Yuan. There isn't any possibility that he would help Jian Wushuang kill Hui Yuan either. In other words, the one who killed Hui Yuan could only be Jian Wushuang. A universe god killed a real god. Blood Emperor's face grew extremely grave. In Sky Sword Prison, in a situation where divine power was capped, there was a possibility for a universe god to kill a real god. For example, the 2 monstrous universe gods on the 2nd level in Sky Sword Prison had the achievement of killing a real god. Hence, Blood Emperor wasn't surprised that Jian Wushuang had reached such a stage. He was shocked at Jian Wushuang's improvement speed. When he first came to Sky Sword Prison, he was only at the 3rd level and not even on the peak of the 3rd level. But it has yet to reach 5,000 years' time. He has already reached the ability of the 2 monstrous universe gods and killed a real god. Such a terrifying speed of improvement. No wonder this boy dares to return to Darkness Mountain. It turns out that he is extremely confident about his own power. However, it is because of his confidence that I have an opportunity to kill him and take blood-killing plate armor. Blood Emperor clenched his fist and looked at the lady in green. Send a message to the experts under my command to keep an eye out for Jian Wushuang within Darkness Mountain from today onwards and report to me immediately when they see Jian Wushuang. This time, I will not give him any chance to run away. Blood Emperor was raging in anger. Hence, within the Darkness Mountain, the real god experts under the command of the Blood Emperor would naturally be the first to be affected by becoming the targets of Jian Wushuang's massacre. Within the Darkness Mountain, Jian Wushuang was continuing his massacre. As for the Blood Emperor, when he received news that even real god Huan Yu had died at the hands of Jian Wushuang, he was no longer able to remain calm. It should be known that real god Huan Yu was a real god who had comprehended a small portion of the power of Heaven Wei, and he belonged to real gods of the 2nd level in the Sky Sword Prison. Even if the Blood Emperor wanted to kill him, he would need to use quite a bit of effort. However, Jian Wushuang was actually able to kill him. The Blood Emperor understood at once that Jian Wushuang's power at the moment had achieved a shocking stage already. In the whole Darkness Mountain, apart from him, no one else could compete with Jian Wushuang. After understanding this point, the Blood Emperor immediately sent a message to the experts in the Darkness Mountain who were under his command. Listen up. All of you who are in the Darkness Mountain, it doesn't matter whether you are a universe god, real god, or even a real god in the 2nd stage. All of you are to find a place to hide and lay low. In addition, hide your presence. With this, that Jian Wushuang should not be able to find you. However, if he does find you, no matter who you are, run away immediately. At the same time, send a message to me and I will rush over straight away. Remember, do not leave it to chance. Although that Jian Wushuang is a universe god, he is extremely powerful. Real god Hui Yuan and real god Qi Lin have already died by his hand. Now, even real god Huan Yu has fallen. If all of you do not start to be careful, the next one to die will be you. The Blood Emperor's message was sent out. At once, many experts in the whole Darkness Mountain were in shock. Jian Wushuang was a universe god. Moreover, it had not been over 5,000 years since he came to the Sky Sword Prison. When he first came to the Sky Sword Prison, he was only of the 3rd level. However, at the moment he could even kill real god Huan Yu, who was of the 2nd level. A universe god who was able to kill a normal real god of the 3rd level had indeed appeared before in the Sky Sword Prison. However, it was the first time that a universe god who was able to kill a real god of the 2nd level who had comprehended a small portion of the power of Heaven Wei had appeared in the Sky Sword Prison. Everyone was surprised by this news. After that, for the sake of remaining alive, the real gods and universe gods in the Darkness Mountain started to find hiding places and kept themselves hidden immediately. Some of them hid in the forest of the tall mountains while some of them hid deep underground. All of them had hidden their presence completely. Under normal circumstances, if a real god were to conceal their presence intentionally, with the consciousness level of a universe god, it would be extremely difficult for the real gods to be discovered. However, in actual fact, no matter how the experts hid themselves or erased their presence, in front of Jian Wushuang's soul power, they were just wasting their energy. With a sweep of his soul power, any experts within its radius would be unable to escape. Comparing Jian Wushuang and the Heartless King, this was something that was more frightening about Jian Wushuang. He continued to wander around the Darkness Mountain as he was seeking the real gods wantonly. As long as they were discovered, he would attack immediately and the real gods had no chance of escaping from his hands. News poured in continuously. First, it was real god Hui Yuan, real god Qi Lin and then real god Huan Yu. What followed after that was real god Tian Yu and real god Xuesha. In a mere 3 months, 5 real gods were killed by Jian Wushuang. It was only a mere 3 months. With this terrifying massacre that was started by Jian Wushuang within the Darkness Mountain, the whole Sky Sword Prison was in an uproar in no time. Chapter 1478, Fighting Against Blood Emperor Again. Chapter 1478, Fighting Against Blood Emperor Again. In 3 months, he had killed 5 real gods. Jian Wushuang's existence already struck fear in all real gods in Sky Sword Prison. The real gods in Darkness Mountain who had attached themselves to Blood Emperor were seized by extreme fear. However, just when Jian Wushuang had met the 6th real god in Darkness Mountain and was killing the 6th real god, Blood Emperor had finally arrived. Blood Emperor had been searching for Jian Wushuang personally in Darkness Mountain when he had killed real god Hui Yuan back then. It was a pity that Darkness Mountain was rather huge. Jian Wushuang was quick in action and Blood Emperor couldn't get there in time when he was killing the few previous real gods. Until the 6th real god. In the spacious void, the breeze blowing was piercingly cold. However, the air was static. Jian Wushuang, in 3 months, 5 real gods under my command were killed. You are really capable. Blood Emperor's gaze was cold, along with boundless murderous intentions, as he glared at Jian Wushuang. Just 5 real gods. Plus, although the 5 real gods were attached to you, there were no substantial benefits to you. Even if I killed them, what effect would it have to you, Blood Emperor? Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. Blood Emperor's face grew dim. Jian Wushuang made it sound so leisurely. Although there were no substantial effects to the 5 real gods' death, what about his reputation? The 5 real gods were an appendage to him and they were killed by Jian Wushuang directly in his territory. That had led to great disgrace to him. Among the experts in Sky Sword Prison, it was probably the topic of conversation then. They were probably all making fun of him. As long as I kill you, everything will settle down. Blood Emperor fixed his gaze at Jian Wushuang. True. It'd die down after you kill me and you'll still be widely recognized as one of the overlords in Sky Sword Prison. As for the 5 real gods, there'll definitely be other real gods to go under your command in the future. However, there's only one problem. Jian Wushuang looked at Blood Emperor with a cheeky smile. That is, whether you can kill me. You have a death wish. There was a sharp gleam in Blood Emperor's eyes. Roar. There was a fierce aura soaring up. Then his body immediately rose and turned into a 3-meter-tall crimson figure, covered in blood. A terrifying, imposing manner swept out. Wow! There was crimson light that plunged through the void. It was extremely creepy. It was as though the entire universe was drowning in a prison of blood. Blood Emperor. Jian Wushuang glared at the incoming Blood Emperor with his bright, sparkly eyes as he plastered a bloodthirsty smile across his face. Virum. There was an enormous amount of crimson flame which flooded in and formed a vast crimson ocean while Jian Wushuang was the king of the crimson ocean. Simultaneously, an enormous amount of blazing quicksand flowed out. Scarlet Kingdom and blazing quicksand were performed at the same time. Over the course of 3,000 years, Jian Wushuang's Scarlet Kingdom had improved under the Fiery King's guidance. He could already perform the third stage of Scarlet Kingdom then. As he performed the mighty Scarlet Kingdom, Jian Wushuang's power increased by double. He moved and there were 9 shadows that appeared all of a sudden. Then, Jian Wushuang immediately wielded his sword. 9th Heaven Stroke. Swoosh! A boundless sword intention soared to the highest heaven. The moment the sword intention exploded, Blood Mountain sword in Jian Wushuang's hand suddenly increased in size. Then, a towering sword shadow appeared in the void. The sword shadow carried a boundless sword intention just like a nemesis sword. There were roars reverberating in the universe simultaneously. Then, there was a demonic dragon that was formed by 9 strips of soul power plunging in the direction of Blood Emperor along with boundless imposing aura. Go! Blood Emperor waved casually and there was no blade shadow. Only a crimson light glided past. The 9 demonic dragons shattered into pieces altogether. The void before Jian Wushuang suddenly shattered and the 3-meter-tall crimson man that Blood Emperor had taken the shape of suddenly appeared from nowhere. Then, there was a crimson claw that clawed at Jian Wushuang's head at lightning speed. In the end, it pierced Jian Wushuang's head but there was no blood nor brains that flushed out. A shadow! Blood Emperor felt his pupils contract. Jian Wushuang's figure was already next to Blood Emperor. Then, Jian Wushuang's body was tense in a bow shape as he gripped Blood Mountain sword tightly. He looked like he was well prepared. 10,000 shadows. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Countless sword lights suddenly erupted. Every sword light was unbelievably fast and the power was terrifying. In that instant, there were hundreds of sword lights that were cast. The hundreds of sword lights were aiming at Blood Emperor's throat, heart, skull and the other vital parts. Every sword light's angle was tricky. 10,000 shadows was like 9th Heaven Stroke. They were created during Jian Wushuang's training in the past 3,000 years. They were real God unique skills. Jian Wushuang had only created 3 real God unique skills by then. Besides those 2, there was crimson light that he previously created. Due to the limitation of his level, the 3 sword principles were merely beginner real God unique skills. However, they were entirely different in nature. 9th Heaven Stroke, also known as Nemesis Sword, carried boundless sword intention. It focused on absolute power. 10,000 shadows was more suitable for close combat. Hundreds of sword lights launched attacks at one's vital parts at the same time, so it was hard to guard against. Crimson light was a combination of speed and power. It'd be more suitable if it were to be used for surprise attack. At the moment the countless sword lights erupted, the vigor in Blood Emperor's body churned and formed a huge crimson beast. The crimson beast blocked Blood Emperor. Not only did it block all the sword lights, it also let out an angry bellow and charged towards Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's body flashed creepily and he shook off the crimson beast with ease. Jian Wushuang, it seems that I have belittled you. In 3,000 years, your power has increased to the current stage. It seems that even if it is me, I have to perform some tricks to be able to kill you. Blood Emperor's cold voice reverberated across the universe. Go ahead and perform all sort of tricks. Jian Wushuang's face grew extremely solemn. If so, then you, prepare to die. There was a glimpse of murderous intention. Blood-killing demon prison. Virum. A terrifying vigor erupted from Blood Emperor's body, and the vigor formed loud clouds of crimson fog that covered the sky. They flowed towards Jian Wushuang at a terrifying speed. This technique. The king of venomous worms in Jian Wushuang body was surprised. Chapter 1479, Unable to do anything. Chapter 1479, Unable to do anything. This is Holocaust Sect's blood-killing demon prison, one of the most terrifying secret skills. Jian Wushuang, you had better be careful. The king of venomous worms warned. Even without the king of venomous worms mentioning it, Jian Wushuang could already tell that this move was not normal. Come. Jian Wushuang's eyes glowed brilliantly and a vast amount of soul power burst forth from his body. In no time, a giant golden divine ape appeared out of thin air. The divine power and soul power from his body had combined beautifully. An immense amount of blood mist came forth. The blood mist contained frightening corrosive power, and it engulfed Jian Wushuang's golden divine ape with a whooshing sound. The golden divine ape on the body surface of Jian Wushuang gave a fierce roar, and even its giant body started to change shape under the corrosive power of the blood mist. Jian Wushuang's expression turned grave. He then manipulated his divine power, and an enormous amount of sword essence burst forth at once. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Sounds of the divine power suppressing the corrosive power could be heard continuously, and they carried on for 2 breaths' time. The great amount of blood mist finally dissipated completely, and within it stood Jian Wushuang. The golden divine ape on his body surface had already disappeared, and what had replaced it was a black tortoise. However, this black tortoise had already been corroded to the point that not much of it was left. Jian Wushuang's gaze was like lightning, and he stared at the Blood Emperor in front of him. What a horrifying secret skill. Just by blocking this move alone, about 30% of my divine power has been depleted, and about half of my soul power has been depleted. If such a secret skill were to be used a few more times, I would be unable to block it. However, it is fortunate that it also takes the Blood Emperor quite a bit of effort to use this move. He could feel that after unleashing this move, the Blood Emperor's aura had depleted considerably as well. At that very moment, the Blood Emperor also looked toward Jian Wushuang. However, his eyes were filled with surprise. He actually blocked it. This little kid actually blocked my blood-killing demon prison? The Blood Emperor was stunned. He knew very well how strong this attack of his was. Even in the Holocaust sect, this secret skill was extremely powerful. However, Jian Wushuang had actually blocked it while facing it head-on. It wasn't until this moment that the Blood Emperor finally understood that Jian Wushuang's abilities were on par with his own. Blood Emperor, that attack just now must have been your strongest attack. Jian Wushuang's icy cold voice could be heard. Since you have already used your strongest attack, you shall take my attack now. As soon as the words left his mouth, a vast amount of soul energy burst forth from Jian Wushuang's body again. The golden divine ape, which had been corroded by the blood mist until nothing was left, appeared again. Moreover, its body seemed to be bigger than before. As for Jian Wushuang, who was shrouded by the golden divine ape, the divine power as well as the 5-star ancient god power in his body erupted from his body and gathered in the index finger of his right hand. As Jian Wushuang's eyes turned narrow, he pointed his index finger, which gathered a vast amount of divine power and glowed brilliantly with a golden light abruptly. Ancient God's 4th finger, God's test. Boom! As soon as he pointed his finger, the heavens and earth shook. The void around the area turned completely dark. Within the endless darkness, a dark, golden-colored, giant finger that looked like it had appeared from the ancient times appeared out of thin air. This finger brought along power that could destroy the world, just like the God's test which descended from the heaven, and the power headed in the direction of the Blood Emperor. Ancient God's 4th finger. As a 5-star ancient god, this was the strongest attack that Jian Wushuang could manage. Judging by raw power itself, this finger was a lot more powerful than the real god's unique skills that Jian Wushuang had created, and it could be considered his strongest attack at that moment. At that moment, Jian Wushuang unleashed his strongest attack. As he looked at the golden-colored giant finger moving toward him, the Blood Emperor's expression turned grave and an enormous amount of crimson light burst forth again. 9-shade crimson knife. A terrifying, bright crimson knife light appeared and swung in the direction of the dark, golden-colored, giant finger. Bam! The finger was struck by the crimson-colored knife light. This caused most of its divine power to be dissipated crazily, and a hole also appeared in the middle of the giant finger. In the end, not much power was left to do anything to the Blood Emperor. Umph! With a groan, the Blood Emperor's face turned pale and he could not help but retreat a step back. However, he regained his posture straight away. Ha! As expected of the Blood Emperor, who is one of the 4 kings. Today, I, Jian Wushuang, have learnt my lesson and I shall take my leave now. A hearty, loud peal of laughter from Jian Wushuang could be heard. However, Jian Wushuang had already unleashed the secret skill of Dragon Skill and plunged into the void far away. The Blood Emperor stared at Jian Wushuang's back coldly. However, he did not give chase. It was clear that Jian Wushuang's ability to escape was impressive and it would be impossible for him to catch up. Moreover, even if he did catch up, he would be unable to do anything to Jian Wushuang. In just 3,000 years, he became this strong. The Blood Emperor had mixed feelings. However, in no time, he began to send a message to the experts in the Darkness Mountain. I have already fought with Jian Wushuang. Currently, his abilities are on par with mine. As for all of you, if you do not wish to die, leave the Darkness Mountain quickly and find a place to hide. After finish sending his message, the Blood Emperor swung the sleeves of his robe, turned around and returned to his Crimson Fortress. He had already exhausted all his energy. However, he was still unable to kill Jian Wushuang. With Jian Wushuang's abilities, if he were to go on a killing spree in the Darkness Mountain, no one could stop him. Within the Darkness Mountain, when the experts under the command of the Blood Emperor received his message, all of them were dumbfounded. Even though the Blood Emperor had taken action personally, he was still unable to do anything to Jian Wushuang. The Blood Emperor personally said that Jian Wushuang's abilities were not inferior to his own? How is this possible? Even the Blood Emperor is unable to do anything. Who else is there in Darkness Mountain who can stop Jian Wushuang's massacre? Run, get out of the Darkness Mountain quickly. If we were to remain here, as soon as we are discovered by Jian Wushuang, we will definitely die. The experts in the Darkness Mountain made a move one after another. No wish to die. If they were to continue staying in the Darkness Mountain, there was a high possibility of them being discovered and killed by Jian Wushuang. However, if they were to leave Darkness Mountain and hide within the vast lands of the Sky Sword Prison, it would be extremely difficult for Jian Wushuang to find them. In the void, Jian Wushuang plunged toward the front slowly. He soon found a place and stopped so that he could recover his divine power. In the fight with the Blood Emperor, he had unleashed many moves continuously and had depleted a great amount of his divine power. This Blood Emperor is indeed strong, especially that blood-killing demon prison move of his. If not for the blood-killing plate armor protecting my body, I might have been unable to block it completely. However, the fight with him had also proven my judgment. My abilities now are indeed about enough to compete with the 4 kings, Jian Wushuang chuckled. With the king of venomous worms present, in no time, Jian Wushuang's divine power had recovered to its peak. Chapter 1480 Jian Wushuang on the first level. Chapter 1480 Jian Wushuang on the first level. Jian Wushuang, I heard that you fought Blood Emperor again? And you were so well matched? Fiery King asked casually. Yeah, we were. But if you were to describe it as well matched, it'd be too forceful. In terms of power, Blood Emperor is stronger than I, Jian Wushuang smiled. The earlier battle looked as though they were well matched, but Jian Wushuang knew clearly that Blood Emperor was one notch above him during the fight. Don't be humble. Blood Emperor admitted himself that your power is not inferior to his, Fiery King said. Jian Wushuang kept quiet. Oh yeah, you're still in Darkness Mountain, right? Fiery King asked again. Jian Wushuang responded. I just received an update. Blood Emperor sent a message to the expert under his command for them to leave Darkness Mountain, Fiery King said. They left. Jian Wushuang was shocked. What else can they do besides leaving? Fiery King scoffed. You're obviously hunting them down. Even real God Huan Yu on the second level died in your hands. The real gods and universe god in Darkness Mountain are naturally afraid of you. Plus, your consciousness probing measure is so impressive. No matter how well they hide themselves in Darkness Mountain, they will be found by you. Under such circumstances, unless one has a death wish, why would they dare to stay back? Jian Wushuang understood then. If these real gods were to leave Darkness Mountain and hide in every corner in Sky Sword Prison covers a large expanse and even I would find it difficult to find them, Jian Wushuang said. True, Fiery King smiled. However, as they are already hiding from me, forget about them. Anyway, those who found trouble with me 3,000 years ago weren't just Blood Emperor alone, Jian Wushuang said. What do you mean? Would you be considering the experts under the command of Heartless? Fiery King said. Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded. 3,000 years ago, Heartless King came to assist Blood Emperor in killing me. Then, I already killed 5 real gods under Blood Emperor's command. As for Heartless King, how can I just let her simply avoid it? I'll go to her territory to carry out a massacre and take revenge on her. Jian Wushuang, Heartless King is different from Blood Emperor. Her consciousness attack is extremely strong. Are you confident that you can deal with her? Fiery King said. Don't worry. As I dare to visit her territory, I am definitely confident, Jian Wushuang smiled. Consciousness attack. The attack that Jian Wushuang feared the least was a consciousness attack. After all, he lit up his soul power. Even though his soul strength only had the limit of Universe God, his soul endurance power was far more impressive compared to real God. After they ended the communication link, Jian Wushuang immediately departed to where Heartless King's territory was. He arrived at Heartless King's territory and started a massacre again. The time flew past. In Sky Sword Prison, in between 2 remote mountains, there was an exquisite purple pavilion. In the pavilion, there were 2 figures seated at a long, narrow table with wine and delicacies. The 2 figures, a man and a woman, were both young and both universe gods. Universe god Tianfeng and universe god Gu Tong were the other 2 most famous universe gods in Sky Sword Prison besides Jian Wushuang. On top of that, they were also known as monstrous. There were many prisoners in Sky Sword Prison. Excluding Jian Wushuang, there were only 28 people on the second level. Among the 28, there were 26 real gods, while the remaining 2 were universe gods, who were the 2 before him. At that very moment, universe god Tianfeng and universe god Gu Tong were drinking as they chatted leisurely. Tianfeng, have you heard about what happened in Heartless Land recently? Universe god Gu Tong asked. Such a major incident, it spread all over Sky Sword Prison so tumultuously. Of course, I know, universe god Tianfeng smiled and continued, speaking of which, Jian Wushuang is pretty amazing. He first visited Blood Emperor's Darkness Mountain and killed 5 real gods. Then he went to Heartless King's Heartless Land and killed 2 real gods. Among the real gods who were killed, there were some who were on the second level. They died by his hand anyway. Then, Universe God Tianfeng was impressed too. He was Universe God himself. Under the circumstances of their divine power being restrained in Sky Sword Prison, he could also kill a real god who was weak as real god Huiyuan. However, if he were to run into real gods on the second level, he could only be evenly matched at most. However, Jian Wushuang could kill real gods on the second level. He was obviously much stronger than him. I heard that Heartless King took action personally. She even performed her strongest masterstroke, Life and Death 9th Heaven, but it didn't cause any effect to him, Universe God Gu Tong exclaimed. Life and Death 9th Heaven? Universe God Tianfeng looked shocked. That's a terrifying dreamland. With Heartless King's capability, if she were to perform it with her all, besides the 3 kings and a few real gods on the top of the second level, theoretically, there shouldn't be anyone else who could withstand the attack in Sky Sword Prison. But this Jian Wushuang, a universe god, can withstand that attack. I wonder why his consciousness is that strong? Both universe god Tianfeng and universe god Gu Tong were fearful of Heartless King's strongest masterstroke. Although both of their fighting powers could be compared favorably to real god on the second level, they were universe gods after all. Their consciousness strength was merely on the level of a universe god's limit. If they were to run into Heartless King need not perform her strongest masterstroke. They reckoned that any of her random consciousness attacks could kill them both. Heartless King and Blood Emperor both took action against him, but they couldn't do anything to Jian Wushuang. Naturally, no one could stop him from carrying out a massacre. Plus, Jian Wushuang was an accomplished universe god in terms of his consciousness-probing ability. As long as he swept with his consciousness, no one could hide or conceal their aura under his watch. Hence, the experts under the command of both kings were terrified, and they left Darkness Mountain and Heartless Land to hide in the corners of Sky Sword Prison. We are all universe gods. Both of us are known as monstrous too. However, compared to Jian Wushuang, the difference is so vast. With his capabilities, it shouldn't be long until he reaches the criteria needed to leave Sky Sword Prison. Yeah, I'm jealous of him. Universe god Tianfeng and universe god Gu Tong sighed emotionally as they were both envious of Jian Wushuang. Then, in Sky Sword Prison, there were people who secretly listed Jian Wushuang on the first level. In other words, he was on the same level as the 4 kings. But no one dared to call Jian Wushuang the 5th king. It was because everyone could tell that Jian Wushuang wouldn't stay in Sky Sword Prison for long. He had already killed the 7th real god by then, and he could totally continue to massacre and kill 10 real gods. It would definitely be very easy. Yes, Jian Wushuang chuckled. I am bidding my farewell to you before I leave. Thank you for taking care of me for the past few years. After I get out, I will definitely find a way to get you out. Ha! Don't think of trying to get me out. The chances are slim. You should continue training outside. For my lineage of Scarlet to have a junior like you, I can die without any regrets. The fiery king laughed heartily. No matter what, I will do my best. After Jian Wushuang repeated himself, the peculiar power in front of him took the form of a giant hand and grabbed Jian Wushuang with lightning speed. Jian Wushuang had no way of defending himself against it and had also never even thought of defending himself against it. He was caught by the giant hand and sent into a wormhole that had opened temporarily. As the wormhole disappeared, the Sky Sword Prison settled down quickly. Within a dim cave, the space opened up, and with a glowing light, Jian Wushuang's body appeared in the cave. This place is... As soon as he appeared, Jian Wushuang's eyes surveyed the area. In no time, his attention was focused on a shadow sitting with its legs crossed in the area in front of him. He was a middle-aged man who carried 3 long swords, and he looked like a unique, fierce sword. This middle-aged man caught Jian Wushuang's attention due to the cruel sword essence that he was releasing. This sword essence had caused even Jian Wushuang to be terrified. Suddenly, the middle-aged man opened his eyes. In a split second, a vast amount of sword essence burst forth, and his cold eyes locked onto Jian Wushuang immediately. At that moment, Jian Wushuang only felt as if his neck had been strangled with great force by someone. He could neither speak nor breathe. This caused him to experience fear that he had never experienced before. The good thing was that this condition only lasted for a moment before it was undone. Jian Wushuang heaved a sigh of relief, and he greeted the middle-aged man respectfully at once. I am Jian Wushuang. Greetings to the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain. What a frightening sword essence. Just a simple gaze was enough to deter Jian Wushuang from having any ideas of resisting him. This middle-aged man must be an almighty. This caused the identity of the middle-aged man in front of him to surface immediately. Little kid, how was your experience in the Sky Sword Prison? The owner of the Sky Sword Mountain asked casually. Not bad, Jian Wushuang replied indifferently. Oh, the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain shot a glance at Jian Wushuang. That's right. You have been in the Sky Sword prison for more than 4,000 years. Moreover, you have also continued to improve yourself during the 4,000 years. Hence, you will not find it uninteresting. To you, this prison has become a good training place. After hearing what was said, Jian Wushuang laughed within himself. Most of the cultivators in the Sky Sword prison had been imprisoned for many years. During these years, their abilities had risen to their maximum a long time ago. Hence, there was not much hope for them to raise their abilities any further even if they wanted to. Moreover, they were unable to leave the prison. Naturally, this was a form of suffering to them. However, Jian Wushuang was completely different. In the past, you killed one of the white deacons in my Sky Sword Mountain. Moreover, you killed him within the Sky Sword Mountain, ignoring the rules of my Sky Sword Mountain. The voice of the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain turned cold. Jian Wushuang became stupefied. However, I have already imprisoned you in the Sky Sword prison as it is a rule of the Sky Sword Mountain. Since you were able to leave the Sky Sword prison by yourself, no matter what feuds you had with my Sky Sword Mountain in the past, all of them are written off. Can leave. Chapter 1482 Jian Wushuang's Request. Chapter 1482 Jian Wushuang's Request. When Jian Wushuang saw that the owner of Sky Sword Mountain had allowed himself to leave, he was delighted, but he didn't move at all. Why, what's up? The owner of Sky Sword Mountain sounded cold. Jian Wushuang thought for a while and said politely, "Senior, to be frank with you, I have 2 requests. I hope that Senior will agree." Ah! The owner of Sky Sword Mountain suddenly laughed. The laughter sounded casual, but as it reverberated, the entire cave dwelling shook vigorously. Jian Wushuang was standing in the middle of the cave dwelling and his face went pale immediately. Luckily, he had already reached the first level of state of mind. Hence, he could continue to stand on his feet in the laughter. If it were to be any ordinary person, even a real god, as long as they wasn't on the first level of state of mind, they might have knelt on the ground. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain stopped laughing and his face grew cold. Such a joke. I am willing to let you go and I'm nice enough to do so. You have the guts to request something from me? Jian Wushuang's face grew grave. His mind and soul were quivering madly under the huge pressure that the owner of Sky Sword Mountain imposed. However, he clenched his teeth and persisted. Humph, as you're a disciple of Star Palace, tell me about it. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain glanced at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was delighted. He took a deep breath and started saying, "The first thing is that I have an enemy over the years that I've spent in Sky Sword Prison. His name is Blood Emperor. Blood Emperor is one of the 4 kings in Sky Sword Prison. I've come across him twice and I'm definite that he's from Holocaust sect. Hence, I'd like to request that you, Senior, eliminate him." Holocaust sect? The owner of Sky Sword Mountain looked at Jian Wushuang and he looked shocked. He previously thought Jian Wushuang was stupid to ask for something at a crucial moment. But from how things were looking, Holocaust sect is the public enemy of countless cultivators in eternal chaotic world. Regardless of when, as soon as an expert of Holocaust sect is found, he must be exterminated immediately. However, are you sure that Blood Emperor is from Holocaust sect? The owner of Sky Sword Mountain stared at Jian Wushuang. Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded heavily. All right then. Wait for a bit, the owner of Sky Sword Mountain said, and then he closed his eyes. Sky Sword Prison, Darkness Mountain, in the Crimson Castle. Blood Emperor was lying leisurely on a crimson bed. Now Jian Wushuang has left, my Darkness Mountain has finally resumed its tranquility, Blood Emperor muttered to himself. He had already sent a command to all the experts, who had left Darkness Mountain to avoid Jian Wushuang previously, to return. After all, he was one of the overlords in Sky Sword Prison. If those experts who were an appendage to him weren't around, he wouldn't feel like an overlord at all. In Sky Sword Prison, in such a dull and fearless environment, his only happiness was derived from his feeling as an overlord. Suddenly, vroom vroom. A strange force condensed in the void above Crimson Castle. This force? What's going on? Could it be that someone is leaving Sky Sword Prison again? Blood Emperor was still in astonishment, but the void above substantiated into a towering hand and grabbed him at lightning speed. Blood Emperor had no strength to resist but was caught by the huge hand. At the same time, there was a terrifying, forceful strength that flushed into Blood Emperor's body and marched unhindered in his body. It's the owner of Sky Sword Mountain. Blood Emperor had fear spread across his face. Humph, it seems like what Jian Wushuang said was right. You're really from Holocaust sect. A cold voice traveled across the universe. At the same time, it rang in Blood Emperor's head. Blood Emperor stiffened in an instant. Jian Wushuang, it's Jian Wushuang. He met the owner of Sky Sword Mountain and told him about my identity. No. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain, please let me off. Please show mercy. Blood Emperor immediately roared and pleaded. You're a lackey from Holocaust sect and you want me to show mercy? Then, the huge hand exerted strength and it was like pinching an ant to death. The hand crushed Blood Emperor's body into pieces. Blood Emperor's aura immediately dispersed too. After that, the huge hand gradually vanished into thin air too. The universe resumed its original state. However, in the shattered ruins of Crimson Castle, the lady in green, who was appendage to Blood Emperor, felt an overwhelming billow in her heart. Blood Emperor is from Holocaust sect. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain found out about his identity and killed him? Jian Wushuang. Is it because of Jian Wushuang? In the dim cave dwelling, the owner of Sky Sword Mountain opened his eyes again. Jian Wushuang, you're right. Blood Emperor was really from Holocaust sect and I've exterminated him. As the owner of Sky Sword Mountain spoke, there was rage in his eyes. These people from Holocaust sect, they deserve to die. They lurk among various cultivators in eternal chaotic world. If they do not reveal some tricks from Holocaust sect, no one would be able to tell their identity. Even if it was me. You helped me this time. Otherwise, I wouldn't know that I had imprisoned an expert from Holocaust sect in Sky Sword Prison. Tell me, what's your second request? Jian Wushuang felt touched. He could clearly feel that the owner of Sky Sword Mountain was treating him slightly better than earlier. Maybe it was because he took a huge risk to request Blood Emperor's death. From the owner of Sky Sword Mountain's point of view, it wasn't a request but a helping hand from Jian Wushuang. Hence, he had a better feeling about Jian Wushuang. Another request is that I hope Senior can release one of the 4 kings, Fiery King, from Sky Sword Prison, Jian Wushuang said with extreme care. Fiery King? The owner of Sky Sword Mountain stole a glance at Jian Wushuang and smiled faintly. You and Fiery King are related. Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded. He took good care of me when I was in Sky Sword Prison. Plus, he and I are from the same lineage originally. He could be considered as one of my seniors. I naturally want him to be released. Of course, if Senior were to have any request in return, I would try my best to fulfill it. Oh! The owner of Sky Sword Mountain immediately waved his hand. If it was an ordinary real god or universe god, I would allow it because you helped me unearth an expert from Holocaust sect earlier. However, Fiery King is one of the kings in Sky Sword Prison. He is quite useful to me, so please return. Senior, Jian Wushuang panicked. Return first. In the future, if my Sky Sword Mountain needs assistance from Lineage of Star, we can discuss it then, the owner of Sky Sword Mountain said and then closed his eyes. Hearing that, Jian Wushuang was convinced. He didn't bother the owner of Sky Sword Mountain further but bowed politely to him before he turned to leave. Chapter 1483, Receiving His Awards. Chapter 1483, Receiving His Awards. After the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain had left the cave, Jian Wushuang did not stay on and he left the Sky Sword Mountain straight away. I have finally left the Sky Sword Mountain. Jian Wushuang looked at the giant Sky Sword Mountain behind him and he felt reluctant. It should be known that he had been imprisoned in the Sky Sword Prison for 4,400 years. During Jian Wushuang's training to date, this was the place that he had stayed for the longest period of time. I should send a message to Hall Master Yuan first. Jian Wushuang took out Hall Master Yuan's transmitting token. However, when he looked at the token, Jian Wushuang's expression turned strange. From his point of view, he was a disciple of the Star Palace. In order to fulfill the ultimate disciple task, he killed someone in the Sky Sword Mountain. Hence, he had broken the rules of the Sky Sword Mountain and was imprisoned in the Sky Sword Prison by the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain himself. Such a matter must have reached the ears of the lineage of Star by now. Under normal circumstances, Hall Master Yuan would have shown himself and thought of ways to get Jian Wushuang out. However, even though a total of 4,000 years had passed, Jian Wushuang continued to remain in the Sky Sword Prison and, in the end, he had depended on his own abilities to get out. Moreover, when he met the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain previously, he did not mention anything about it. Hall Master Yuan, Jian Wushuang sent a message and he got a reply promptly. Jian Wushuang, you got out of the Sky Sword Prison so quickly? Hall Master Yuan's voice was filled with a bit of surprise. Previously, I had thought that you would be able to get out within 50,000 years. Looking at it now, I was too conservative. In less than 5,000 years, you left the Sky Sword Prison with your own hard work. The Sky Sword Prison is extremely dangerous. My luck must have been good as well. Otherwise, I might not have a chance to send a message to you again, Hall Master Yuan, Jian Wushuang said. Ha! It is obvious that you are trying to blame it on me. However, you must understand that the Sky Sword Mountain is not a small force. Moreover, you were imprisoned by the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain himself. In my lineage of Star, the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain might only be willing to give some face if the Palace Master showed himself. However, the Palace Master is always meditating in seclusion throughout the year. You know this, Hall Master Yuan said. Understood, Jian Wushuang nodded his head. All right, since you have come out, return back here and meet me so that you can receive the additional rewards for completing the ultimate disciple task. After finishing speaking, Hall Master Yuan cut off the transmission. Jian Wushuang kept his token. However, his gaze was abnormal. Jian Wushuang, if my guess is not wrong, when Hall Master Yuan arranged the third part of your task, he had already guessed that you would be imprisoned in the Sky Sword Prison. In other words, you could also say that he arranged for you to be imprisoned in the Sky Sword Prison. The King of Venomous Worms' voice echoed in Jian Wushuang's head. I have also thought of this point. Jian Wushuang smiled indifferently. In actual fact, when he was just imprisoned in the Sky Sword Prison, he had already had suspicions. After all, back then when he was about to face Universe God Mo Yen, he had made ample preparations and the process had been executed perfectly. Although those real gods near Universe God Mo Yen did not realize it, the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain, who was in a distant cave, had actually realized it and took action personally. For this to happen, the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain must really possess remarkable powers. Even though he was meditating in seclusion, he still had everything that was going on in the Sky Sword Mountain in his eyes. However, there was another possibility, and that was that the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain had had his eyes on the Sky Sword Mountain for that period of time. More accurately, he had his eyes on Jian Wushuang. As long as I make a move, the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain will show up immediately and imprison me in the Sky Sword Prison. Jian Wushuang shook his head and giggled. Of course, he knew that Hall Master Yuan had done this to train him and it was out of goodwill. Moreover, although he was imprisoned for over 4,000 years in the Sky Sword Prison, in terms of abilities, he had improved greatly. Let's return to the lineage of Star. Jian Wushuang headed for the Purple Moon Sanctuary immediately. Within the dazzling galaxy of the Star Land in the Purple Moon Sanctuary. I have returned. Jian Wushuang appeared in the vast galaxy. As he looked at the neighboring galaxies, he could also faintly see a meta beast playing in the galaxy from the corners of his eyes. Hence, he could not help but wear a smile. In no time, Jian Wushuang returned to within the lineage of Star. As soon as he had returned, he went to see Hall Master Yuan. Jian Wushuang, after not seeing you for over 4,000 years, Your abilities must have risen considerably, right? Hall Master Yuan looked at Jian Wushuang with a smile. About there, Jian Wushuang said. I also know a bit about the rules of the Sky Sword Prison. Since you left the Sky Sword Prison with your own abilities, you must have killed a sufficient number of experts. Tell me, how many experts have you killed? Are they universe gods or real gods? Hall Master Yuan questioned. I killed 10 real gods. Jian Wushuang did not hide the truth. Real gods? Hall Master Yuan's eyes brightened. Although the real gods in the Sky Sword Prison have their divine power restricted to some extent, their bodies and unique skills did not weaken. For you to be able to kill 10 such real gods, seems like you must possess the power to rank in the top 30 of the universe god ranking list. Should be, Jian Wushuang nodded his head. In actual fact, Hall Master Yuan only knew that he had killed 10 real gods. However, he did not know that it was done in a very short period of time. Moreover, among the 10 real gods, some of them had already comprehended a small portion of the power of Heaven Wei and belonged to the second stage of real gods. In addition, Jian Wushuang's power might even be able to rival that of the 4 kings in the Sky Sword Prison. For him to be able to do this much, Jian Wushuang's abilities could totally earn him a place in the top 20, or even higher, on the universe god ranking list. Alright, there is no need for unnecessary words. Now, I shall give you the additional rewards for completing the ultimate disciple task. Hall Master Yuan became stern. Firstly, the additional reward for the first part of the task, 100 million Chaos Gems. For these 100 million Chaos Gems, due to the fact that you owe the Star Pavilion 47 million Chaos Gems, you will only receive 53 million Chaos Gems. Hall Master Yuan took out a Qian Kuan ring and handed it to Jian Wushuang. After Jian Wushuang received the ring, he swept his eyes past it normally and kept it after that. Although 53 million Chaos Gems was not a small sum, to Jian Wushuang just then, it was not a lot. It should be known that within the Sky Sword Prison, he had killed 10 real gods. Among the 10 real gods, there were weak ones as well as strong ones. By killing the real gods, all their valuables and family keepsakes had fallen into his hands. By adding all of them up, the Chaos Gems that he possessed had already exceeded 1,000 million. For the second and third parts of the task, you have acquired the opportunity to enter the real God Hall. For the second part of the task, you are allowed to enter for a month. For the third part of the task, you are allowed to enter for 2 months. By adding them up, you are allowed to enter for a total of 3 months. Jian Wushuang, you should have comprehended reincarnation doctrine from the 4 supreme doctrines, right? Hall Master Yuan looked at Jian Wushuang with interest. Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded and admitted it straight away. That's it then. Not only is Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor great in defense power, it contains a secret skill that can enhance one's power. The secret skill requires the power of reincarnation to trigger it. The higher one's comprehension towards reincarnation doctrine is, the stronger the power triggered from the secret skill. However, relying on your current comprehension level, it should still be rather difficult to trigger the secret skill, Hall Master Yuan said. Jian Wushuang grabbed the Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor straight away. He touched the armor gently with his palm. Jian Wushuang could even faintly resonate with the armor. Then, Jian Wushuang's smile grew even wider. Oh yeah, as you already have Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor. Please pass me the Blood-Killing Plate Armor. Hall Master Yuan looked over. Blood-Killing Plate Armor? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. Blood-Killing Plate Armor is Holocaust Sect's treasure after all. Previously, you were weaker in power and there was no better treasure. You had no choice but to use Blood-Killing Plate Armor, but now, your power had increased tremendously and you have got yourself a stronger Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor. It's best to not keep Blood-Killing Plate Armor with you. The experts from Holocaust Sect possess a certain sensory power to Blood-Killing Plate Armor after all. If you were to wander in eternal chaotic world with Blood-Killing Plate Armor with you, you might catch the attention of the people from Holocaust Sect, Hall Master Yuan explained. Jian Wushuang nodded faintly. In Sky Sword Prison, he had been under Blood Emperor's watch because of blood-killing plate armor. In Eternal Chaotic World, there were definitely more hidden Holocaust sect experts. There definitely were experts stronger than Blood Emperor, but he had never come across one before. It was naturally best to pass blood-killing plate armor to Hall Master Yuan. Jian Wushuang removed the owner recognition on blood-killing plate armor, then passed it to Hall Master Yuan. This blood-killing plate armor saved my life countless times. Jian Wushuang sighed. Although he loathed to hand it over, he had no choice. Blood-killing plate armor was Holocaust sect's treasure after all. Very soon, Jian Wushuang left Hall Master Yuan's and returned to Sword Star where he resided. He saw Qiu Yuan Sword Star and briefly asked about how the internal affairs in Lineage of Star had been over the past 4,000 years. Then, Jian Wushuang opted to cultivate in seclusion. In the secret room, Jian Wushuang sat down while the crimson blood feather reincarnation armor floated before him. Start owner recognition. There was a glimpse of light shimmering in Jian Wushuang's eyes, and he started the owner recognition process. Blood feather reincarnation armor was a real god-level chaos unique treasure after all. It wasn't easy for it to recognize a new owner, but fortunately, Jian Wushuang comprehended reincarnation doctrine and he was a person of quick comprehension. There wasn't any accident in the process of owner recognition. A month later, blood feather reincarnation armor turned into a crimson robe and was put on by Jian Wushuang. After owner recognition, Jian Wushuang started studying the secret skill in blood feather reincarnation armor. Jian Wushuang was surprised when he started to study it. Hall Master Yuan only knew I comprehended reincarnation doctrine, but he didn't know how much I comprehended reincarnation doctrine. Its beginner level requires one to possess comprehension level towards reincarnation doctrine that could pass through the first level of Doctrine Palace. And I happened to reach the prerequisites. Chapter 1485, Challenging the Star Tower Again. Chapter 1485, Challenging the Star Tower Again. The secret skill of the blood feather reincarnation armor indeed required a very high level of the reincarnation doctrine. Just the beginner level alone would require the power to clear the first level of the Doctrine Palace. However, Jian Wushuang had an extremely high level of comprehension of the reincarnation doctrine. During the 4,000 years in the Sky Sword Prison, he had been studying the painting of understanding sword via reincarnation intensively. As a result, he had completely understood the first 3 paintings of the painting of understanding sword via reincarnation. Hence, he possessed the power to clear the first level of the Doctrine Palace. In just a short while, Jian Wushuang managed to get the hang of the secret skill. Within the secret room, Jian Wushuang continued to sit with his legs crossed. However, he had already fully activated the secret skill of the blood feather reincarnation armor. Gosh, this power! Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists tightly and felt the enormous amount of power in his hands. It was the full release of his divine power. However, after he had activated his blood and the secret skill of the reincarnation armor, his divine power increased greatly compared to the past. As of now, my divine power is unable to rival that of a real god. However, the distance between us is no longer as huge as before. Jian Wushuang sighed. The difference in divine power between a real god and universe god was extremely great. Previously, in the Sky Prison Tower, it was because of the fact that the real god's divine power was restricted that Jian Wushuang could kill them. If not for the restriction, he could only fight with the weakest of the real gods. However, at that very moment, with the secret skill of the blood feather reincarnation armor, the difference in divine power between him and the real gods had been reduced greatly. Not only does this blood feather reincarnation armor increase my defense greatly, it has also caused my abilities as a whole to skyrocket. Jian Wushuang chuckled and he was elated. After getting the hang of the secret skill, Jian Wushuang walked out of the secret room. Next, he walked toward the Star Tower. The Star Tower was one of the 3 training grounds of the Lineage of Star, and Jian Wushuang had only cleared its first level. Within the second level of the Star Tower, swoosh! Jian Wushuang summoned 9 shadows and unleashed his sword principles. He was extremely swift and fierce. The long-bearded, strict middle-aged man who fought with him also swung his long sword and clashed with Jian Wushuang's attacks continuously. However, it was obvious that Jian Wushuang's sword principles were faster and fiercer. Their power was also a lot greater. Go down! Jian Wushuang gave a shout and a sword light struck the body of the strict middle-aged man like lightning and caused him to retreat. The second level was cleared. As for the third level was a lot more difficult than the second level. By relying on his own sword principles and his close combat abilities, he was not the stern middle-aged man's opponent. In the end, Jian Wushuang had no choice but to use the reincarnation doctrine that he had learnt. By adding reincarnation power to the sword principles, their power rose sharply and he cleared the third level straight away. After clearing the third level, Jian Wushuang did not continue. Instead, he left. I have already learnt 3 of the 4 secret skills of the lineage of Star. For these 3 secret skills, the secret skills of Star Palace could be learnt when one becomes a disciple of the Star Palace. As for Xian Nie Golden Body, I only managed to learn it after I cleared the 19th level of the illusionary mind sea. However, I am still unable to explain the origin of the secret skill of Dragon Blood. But now, I have cleared the 3rd level of the Star Tower. Hence, I am able to learn another secret skill. Thus, it is logical that I am able to learn the secret skill of Dragon Blood. As Jian Wushuang walked across the tall buildings alone, he wore an indifferent smile. Senior Wushuang. Greetings, Senior. During his walk, the disciples of the lineage of Star, who Jian Wushuang had met, all greeted him modestly. As for some of the disciples, they were talking in whispers. Senior Wushuang demonstrated his extraordinary skills in the previous battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace, and he is almost on par with Ling Feibai. Later on, he went out to the outside world alone for training, and this journey alone was for over 4,000 years. It is only until when the next battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace is about to reopen again that he finally returned. Say, do you think Senior Wushuang will be able to retain his position as a disciple of the Star Palace in the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace this time round? No idea. This is hard to say. If Senior Wushuang remains a universe god of the second heaven, then there will be no problem. However, at that moment, he and the equally famous Ling Feibai back then will have both become universe gods of the third heaven. The battle between the Star Palace disciples who were universe gods of the third heaven will be more intense. However, Senior Wushuang is extremely talented. Even if he were to be reduced to a normal disciple in the battle this time round, by waiting for another 5,000 years for the next battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace, he would definitely be able to climb up the ranks. That is true. Jian Wushuang, a voice could be heard. Jian Wushuang stopped walking and turned his head. When he saw the person walking over, he wore a smile. Long time no see, Ling Feibai, Jian Wushuang laughed happily. It is because of the fact that you keep on immersing yourself in training in the outside world. The elegant and smart youth Ling Feibai came to the front of Jian Wushuang. Ling Feibai was one of the top geniuses of the lineage of Star. During the previous battle between the geniuses of the Star Palace disciples, at the universe god of the second heavens level, Ling Feibai could be said to be unrivaled. Even Jian Wushuang had lost to Ling Feibai in that battle. After over 4,000 years, Ling Feibai had already passed the god's test for the third heaven and become a universe god of the third heaven. Just a while more and the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace that occurs once every 5,000 years will begin again. Do you have confidence this time round? Ling Feibai looked toward Jian Wushuang. The battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace? Jian Wushuang was stunned. Back then, when he had first come to the Star Palace, he had paid close attention to the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace. After all, if he were unable to keep himself within the top 5, he would be reduced to a normal disciple. In the lineage of Star, the difference in treatment between a normal disciple and a Star Palace disciple was extremely huge. However, at that moment, Jian Wushuang was no longer that interested in the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace. Looking at the time, the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace is indeed about to begin soon. Jian Wushuang chuckled and spoke again immediately. I am quite confident. How about you? I have no confidence at all. Ling Feibai shook his head and forced a smile. Jian Wushuang, ever since you made a breakthrough to the universe god of the third heaven, you have been living in the outside world. Hence, you have never fought with the disciples who are universe gods of the third heaven before. As such, there are some things that you do not know. Give me an example. Jian Wushuang spoke with interest. Then I shall tell you. Within the universe god disciples of the 3 levels of the lineage of star, the number of disciples who are universe gods of the third heaven is the greatest, Ling Feibai said. Oh! Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and he understood quickly. Chapter 1486, Look for Someone. Chapter 1486, Look for Someone. There was a huge threshold between universe god in the third heaven and real god. Unlike leveling up to universe god in the second heaven from the first heaven. When the time came, it'd happen when one passed the god's test. There were many universe gods in the third heaven in eternal chaotic world. Even in a smaller world, they could give birth to universe god in third heaven and more than one of them. However, real gods, compared to universe gods, there were much lesser real gods. Countless universe gods would stop at the level of universe gods in the third heaven for their entire life. Under such conditions, it was normal that the number of disciples of lineage of star who were universe gods in the third heaven would be more than universe gods in the first and second heaven. Because there are too many disciples who are universe gods in the third heaven, the fight is the most vigorous, especially to fight for the quota as disciples of Star Palace, Ling Feibai explained. Then, among the disciples of lineage of star who are universe gods in the third heaven, the top 2 are listed in universe god ranking list. Besides the 2 of them, the others who are close to having fighting power like one on the universe god ranking list, and even those who have fighting power like one on the universe god ranking list, are almost a dozen of them. The duration that I've been a universe god in the third heaven is too short. In terms of power, I might not be in the top 20 among the disciples. You mean, when the fight for the quota as disciple of Star Palace starts, I might not be able to retain my position as a disciple of Star Palace. Jian Wushuang was quiet. Ling Feibai was a genius through and through. However, it was a short time since he had broken through and become a universe god in the third heaven. His power had yet to increase to its extreme limit. He still couldn't fight against the genius disciples who had been trapped at the level of universe god in the third heaven for many years. With your gifted talent, even if you became an ordinary disciple, when the next fight comes, you can easily take it back, no? Jian Wushuang smiled. That's true, Ling Feibai nodded with confidence. All right, I shall leave first. I have business to attend to. Ling Feibai left very quickly. Jian Wushuang continued to walk forward, but his facial expression grew strange. Battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace. If Ling Feibai didn't remind me, I would have forgotten about it. However, with my current power, I might play the bully if I were to participate the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace. Jian Wushuang laughed from the bottom of his heart. 4,000 years ago, when he had first passed his inverse cultivation test in the second heaven and comprehended a slight bit of power of reincarnation, he had fought against an expert on universe god ranking list, Zhao Han. Back then, his fighting power wasn't much weaker than Zhao Han's. Then, after he went through 4,000 years of training in Sky Sword Prison, his power had increased tremendously. Previously, Hall Master Yuan never once see him when he launched his full power. He merely heard about him killing 10 real gods in Sky Sword Prison and determined that he possessed the fighting power of the top 30 on Universe God ranking list. One should know that the 2 most outstanding people from the disciples who were Universe Gods in the third heaven, their ranking on Universe God ranking list was not in the top 40s. Hence, neither were Jian Wushuang's match. Hence, Jian Wushuang felt like a bully to participate the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace with the other universe gods in the third heaven. The current me in lineage of star or even 10 cultivation sanctuaries already stands steadily on my feet. Plus, I have many resources to hand, I can go and do that now. Jian Wushuang's eyes gave out a gleam. Vientiane Tower, also known for covering all manifestations of the universe. Its force covered every single corner of 10 cultivation sanctuaries. In the secret room of Vientiane Tower on Starland, Jian Wushuang sat in his crimson robe with a sword on his back. There was tea served before him too. I wonder what Vientiane Tower can do for you. A purple-haired elderly stood before Jian Wushuang with a smile. I want you, Vientiane Tower, to look for someone for me, Jian Wushuang said. Look for someone? The purple-haired elderly was surprised. I know Vientiane Tower does all kinds of deals. Looking for someone should be one of the deals, right? Jian Wushuang lifted his head to look at the purple-haired elderly. Of course, in Vientiane Tower, as long you can afford to pay, there's nothing Vientiane Tower cannot do for you. The purple-haired elderly smiled faintly and then asked, I wonder what's the name of the person you're looking for and where is he from? Her name is Leng Rushue, or maybe Leng Rushuang. She's a lady from Snow Kingdom, in ordinary eternal world. She only arrived in eternal chaotic world in the past recent 10,000 years, Jian Wushuang said. The level of her power? The purple-haired elderly asked. I don't know, Jian Wushuang shook his head, maybe a universe god. Also she may have broken through and became real god. You don't know the level of her power? The purple-haired elderly thought and continued to ask, do you know the person's other characteristics? And, she's an inborn sinner. Jian Wushuang said in a low voice. What? The purple-haired man's face changed and immediately creased his eyebrows. Why, is there a problem? Jian Wushuang asked. Yes, a little, the purple-haired elderly nodded. You should know that inborn sinners represent calamity. The experts in eternal chaotic world deep-seated hatred against inborn sinners, not much better than Holocaust sect. Hence, as long as the inborn sinners aren't stupid, they will intentionally hide their identity and they will keep a low profile. They won't even use their name. Hence, it'll be rather difficult for us to look for them. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes slightly. He knew what the purple-haired elderly said was true. After Leng Rushue left Green Fire World, theoretically, she should first depart to Dayu World. However, when Jian Wushuang was wandering in Dayu World, he once requested for the overlord of Dayu World, Dayu Palace and Scarlet Island to search for Leng Rushue's carefully. However, after the search, there found no trace. Over the years, he had been looking for ways to find Leng Rushue's whereabouts, but he had achieved nothing. He knew that it wasn't easy to look for Leng Rushue. Hence, he had came to Vientiane Tower. In the entire eternal chaotic world, he reckoned that only Vientiane Tower had the ability to look for Leng Rushue for him. Vientiane Tower is also known to be formidable. No matter how well she has hidden, you should be able to find her. Jian Wushuang stared at the purple-haired elderly as he spoke. That's true, the purple-haired elderly smiled. However, to find a person who has tried all ways to hide her identity in the boundless eternal chaotic world and without the knowledge of the inborn sinner's power level, it is really not easy. Hence, the payment required is extremely expensive. How much? Jian Wushuang asked coldly. 1 billion chaos gems. Vientiane Tower can guarantee that we will find Leng Rushue's whereabouts in 10,000 years' time. The purple-haired elderly said with full confidence. 10,000 years? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. 10,000 years is a little too long. Chapter 1487, The Fight for Prestige. Chapter 1487, The Fight for Prestige. Jian Wushuang was not too concerned with 1,000 million chaos gems. What he was concerned about was time. After all, his wife had been completely suppressed by Leng Rushue. Moreover, it had been a very long time since Leng Rushue left the Green Fire World. In that period of time, he had absolutely no idea how Leng Rushuang was doing. Did her circumstances become worse? Jian Wushuang was as anxious as a burning fire. Naturally, it was better for Leng Rushue to be found as early as possible. 10,000 years is already considered short, the purple-haired old man said. All of a sudden, his expression changed. By the way, do you have a picture of Leng Ruxue, or portrait-related items? I have her portrait. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. He would naturally have a portrait of his own wife. Even if he didn't, he could rely on his own memory and draw one on the spot. After receiving the portrait, the purple-haired old man swept his eyes past it. Afterward, he revealed a smile. What a great beauty! In the whole eternal chaotic world, there are not many people with such good looks. This makes it easier for us to find her. How about this? The cost will remain unchanged at 1,000 million chaos gems. My Vientiane Tower will do our best to give you an answer within 3,000 years. 3,000 years? Jian Wushuang's eyes squinted. No problem. This is the 300 million chaos gem deposit. When there is news, I will give you the remaining amount. All right. The purple-haired old man accepted the chaos gem heartily. Jian Wushuang left his own transmission token behind and left. Inside a pub, Jian Wushuang sat on a side desk and drank wine by himself. Shuanger. An extremely beautiful figure that could move people appeared in Jian Wushuang's mind. 3,000 years. No matter where you are, I will definitely find you. Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists tightly and his eyes glowed brilliantly. Leng Rushuang was his wife as well as the love of his life. Jian Wushuang, a message was sent over abruptly. Hall Master Yuan, Jian Wushuang replied immediately. Where are you? Are you within the lineage of Star? Hall Master Yuan questioned. Nope, but I am about to go back now, Jian Wushuang said. Don't return first, I need your help for a small matter, Hall Master Yuan said. Oh. Jian Wushuang revealed a surprised expression. This is what happened, Hall Master Yuan spoke. Within our starland, there is a weak, small sect known as Green Lightning Sect. The Green Lightning Sect is under the charge of the lineage of Star. Not long ago, Green Lightning Sect and its opponent Seven Planet Sect agreed on a duel between their disciples. Naturally, this duel concerned the benefits the sects would get respectively. Hence, both sides had a tacit agreement to invite experts from the outside. Naturally, the Green Lightning Sect requested the aid of the lineage of Star at once. The lineage of Star had never declined before and we sent a Star Palace disciple over. Initially, with a Star Palace disciple who is a universe god of the third heaven, it would be easy to help the Green Lightning Sect win the duel. However, the Green Lightning Sect lost the duel. Oh! Jian Wushuang shuddered. All of the Star Palace disciples were geniuses among geniuses. A Star Palace disciple who was a universe god of the third heaven should have fighting capabilities nearing that of the universe gods on the universe god ranking list. However, the universe god of the third heaven had actually lost to a disciple of the seven-planet sect. Could it be that the seven-planet palace invited an expert from the universe god ranking list? Jian Wushuang questioned. It would be good if the seven-planet palace invited an expert from the universe god ranking list. Chapter 1488 Jian Wushuang's Arrival. Chapter 1488 Jian Wushuang's Arrival. Green Lightning Sect, in a lofty palace. There were two figures sitting together. One was an elegant man with long purple hair while the other was an old lady in black robe. Elder Qiu, is there any update from Hall Master Yuan? The elegant man with long purple hair asked. Yes, the old lady in black robe answered. Hall Master Yuan has already arranged for his disciple to come over. Do you know who the disciple is? The elegant man with long purple hair asked. No idea. The lady in black robe shook her head. However, with Ling Dan's ability, among disciples of lineage of Star, there should only be the two strongest, Longya and Xian Yi, who are qualified to fight against him. Hall Master Yuan should have sent one of the two. I hope the one who came is Senior Longya. He's number 51 on Universe God ranking list. If he were to take action personally, he could definitely defeat Ling Dan, the elegant man with long purple hair said. The old lady in a black robe creased her eyebrows slightly when she heard that. She was the deacon elderly from lineage of Star. She watched the fight between the elegant man with long purple hair and Ling Dan clearly. She was the one who had determined that Xian Yi had the fighting power of one on the top 40 on Universe God ranking list. From his point of view, even if Long Yo were to fight Ling Gan, he would be out of the running. I wonder where did Ling Dan popped out of? I've never heard of him previously. However, he is so strong. The elegant man with long purple hair clenched his fists. He had fought with Ling Dan, but he was heavily defeated. There are countless experts in eternal chaotic world, and there are many geniuses that aren't famous but very strong. Ling Dan is just one of them. However, Ling Dan has the guts. How dare he use the disciple of Star Palace as his stepping stone? The old lady in a black robe had rage in her eyes. She really wanted to kill Ling Dan personally. Just you wait. When Hall Master Yuan was talking to me earlier, he sounded rather at ease. He should have a solution for this, the old lady in black robe said. In a few days' time. Then he's here. The old lady in a black robe and the elegant man with long purple hair who were waiting in the palace stood up simultaneously. They already sensed the existence of the disciple's token on the figure outside of Green Lightning Sect. It is the disciple token of Disciple of Star Palace. It is definitely Senior Long Ya, the elegant man with long purple hair exclaimed in surprise. Let's go. Let's go and greet him, the old lady in black robe revealed a smile. The two of them immediately got up and came outside of Green Lightning Sect very soon. From afar, they saw a figure in a crimson robe who stood calmly in the void. Not Senior Long Ya? The elegant man with long purple hair creased his eyebrows. When the two of them got closer, they finally get to see the face of the figure in a crimson robe. Jian Wushuang? The elegant man with long purple hair couldn't help but gasp in surprise. It's him. The old lady in black robe was extremely shocked. They originally thought it would be the strongest among disciples of Star Palace, who was also the 51st on Universe God ranking list, Long Ya. Even if it wasn't, it should be Xian Yi, who was 82nd on Universe God ranking list. But in the end, it was one who had no fame at all in 10 cultivation sanctuaries, one who was never listed on Universe God ranking list, one who had broken through and become Universe God in the third heaven. It was Jian Wushuang. Swoosh. Swoosh. The old lady in a black robe and the elegant man with long purple hair appeared before Jian Wushuang. Elder Qiu, Senior Hufeng, Jian Wushuang greeted them. He knew both of them. Jian Wushuang, Hall Master Yuan sent you? The old lady in a black robe, Elder Qiu asked. Yes, Jian Wushuang smiled as he nodded. Just you alone? Senior Long Ya or Senior Xian isn't here together. The elegant man with long purple hair, Hufeng, asked in a deep voice. Just me alone. Jian Wushuang was still smiling. Hall Master Yuan is joking, right? Hufeng's face grew grave. Ling Dan is so powerful and he could definitely be listed on Universe God ranking list. He might even be quite high up in Universe God ranking list. If I am not his match, you have no chance, Jian Wushuang. Since when did Hall Master Yuan not worry much about Lineage of Stars' reputation? Senior Hufeng, Jian Wushuang's face grew dim and unhappy. Hall Master Yuan is one of the 3 Hall Masters in Lineage of Star. How could he not bother about Lineage of Stars' reputation? As he sent me, he naturally has his own intentions. What intentions? Could it be that you could really defeat Ling Dan? Forget about Ling Dan, I'm afraid you won't even stand a chance against me. Hufeng stared at Jian Wushuang. How will you know if you don't try? Jian Wushuang stole a glance at Hufeng. All right, Elder Qiu finally spoke. I believe in Hall Master Yuan. However, Ling Dan is really strong. From what I can see, he could be listed in the top 40 on Universe God ranking list. Jian Wushuang, are you really confident? Yeah, Jian Wushuang nodded. That's great. We'll look for Ling Dan now. How about that? Elder Qiu said. Okay, Jian Wushuang immediately agreed. Immediately, Elder Qiu brought Jian Wushuang towards where Ling Dan was. As for Hufeng, although he didn't believe that Jian Wushuang could fight evenly with Ling Dan, he followed as well. Heavenly Fire Summit, where Green Lightning sect fought against the disciple of Seven Planet Palace. After Ling Dan defeated Hu Feng, he stayed back at Heavenly Fire Summit and waited for the other disciples of Lineage of Star to come forth. When Jian Wushuang came near to Heavenly Fire Summit, his soul power instantly sensed the existence of countless cultivators' aura. The number of cultivators gathered around Heavenly Fire Summit just then was definitely more than 1,000,000 people. Why are there so many people? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. A bunch of people are here to enjoy the excitement. They came because Ling Dan intentionally spread news to attract them, Elder Chiu said. Because he attracted a large crowd, we of Lineage of Star didn't dare to flagrantly take action. Otherwise, Ling Dan would have died over and over again. However, he wouldn't be happy for too long. When this is solved, Lineage of Star will keep watch of him. We will kill him with our own hands once we get the chance to. Hearing that, Jian Wushuang complimented in silence. He could feel the murderous intentions of Elder Chiu. Merely to gain fame and be listed on Universe God ranking list, he could have challenged whichever experts on Universe God ranking list. Of all things, he decided to tease Lineage of Star and provoke us flagrantly. This Ling Dan is so irrational. Or maybe his provocation isn't simply just to gain fame? Jian Wushuang muttered. Who knows? Elder Chiu pouted. Regardless, let's go and meet him. With a smile on his face, Jian Wushuang's figure plunged towards Heavenly Fire Summit. Ling Dan. A low bellow was heard from Jian Wushuang and it reverberated through the universe. Chapter 1490, Defeat. Chapter 1490, Defeat. The originally noisy voice suddenly turned deadly quiet. It was dead silent. There were more than 1,000,000 cultivators spectating Heavenly Fire Summit. Every one of them was surprised at the sight. How could he? Hu Feng stood there with his eyes wide opened. As for Ling Dan himself, he was dumbfounded too. 3 moves. From when Jian Wushuang had started taking action until then, he had only made 3 moves. In a short time, like the blink of an eye. Ling Dan spurted blood and retreated. What did it mean? Ling Dan, you lost. Jian Wushuang held his sword with one hand as he towered in the void, and he looked at Ling Dan. Lost? What kind of joke is that? I was merely careless and you seized the opportunity. You think you're stronger than I am? That's a joke. Ling Dan's face was distorted in agony and his gaze towards Jian Wushuang was cold. As he bellowed, there was a terrifying aura that his body gave out. Jian Wushuang, die. Ling Dan's figure turned illusionary as he took action again. This time, his action brought about a terrifying murderous intention, just like a furious beast with raging anger. Jian Wushuang's face grew cold as he saw the sight. Ling Dan was already defeated, but he didn't accept failure. He wanted to fight again. Humph! A cold harumph and Jian Wushuang took a step forward. The moment he took a step, Blood Mountain sword in his hand let an imposing sword in tension and suddenly swung out. 9th Heaven Stroke. Hong! A boundless sword in tension soared out of 9th Heaven and a huge, towering sword shadow suddenly appeared in the void out of nowhere. The sword shadow brought a long sword in tension. Just like Nemesis sword, it struck at Ling Dan like lightning. At the same time, the secret skill from the Blood Feather reincarnation armor that Jian Wushuang was wearing was triggered and Jian Wushuang's power was instantly pushed to a brand new, explosive level. Earlier, when Jian Wushuang had been fighting against Ling Dan, he didn't trigger the secret skill of Blood Feather reincarnation armor. But then, bang! A low thud and in the instance, the surrounding void shattered into pieces from the force. A terrifying divine power storm swept out. From such divine power storm, a crimson figure that was covered in fresh blood suddenly plunged out. Everyone could see clearly that the explosion was from Ling Dan. Then Ling Dan's aura was extremely weak and he was just like a dead dog when he was slammed back at Heavenly Fire Summit. Rumble! Heavenly Fire Summit was instantly pierced while Ling Dan fell under a ruin. He didn't move an inch and no one knew if he was dead or alive. In the middle of the battlefield, the divine power storm gradually dispersed and revealed Jian Wushuang's figure. Such an idiot! Jian Wushuang glared at the ruin where Ling Dan was as his anger soared to the air. It was deadly quiet in Heavenly Fire Summit. Dead silent. If they were to say that Jian Wushuang had severely injured Ling Dan 3 moves earlier, it might be Ling Dan who was careless. But then, merely with one stroke. Ling Dan had obviously gone all out. However, with one stroke, no one knew if he was dead or alive. He was in an even more pathetic state than before. What was going on? The people on the scene were not fools. They could see clearly. One stroke and he defeated Ling Dan. This Jian Wushuang is so strong. The funniest part is that Ling Dan regarded himself as infallible. He said that he was careless, but now he has been defeated by one stroke. Too strong. This Jian Wushuang is too strong. Countless exclamation was heard in the air. The millions of cultivators surrounding Heavenly Fire Summit were in unprecedented shock. Hu Feng, who was not far behind Jian Wushuang, had his eyes wide opened. He couldn't believe the sight before him. 7-Planet Palace Master is definitely involved in this. So fight. Jian Wushuang pointed at 7-Planet Palace Master with his sword. Suddenly, the entire universe was in shock. This Jian Wushuang challenged 7-Planet Palace Master after he had defeated Ling Dan. 7-Planet Palace Master, he is a true real god expert. This Jian Wushuang he wants to challenge real god? Stunned. Everyone was stunned. 7-Planet Palace Master was stunned on the spot too. 7-Planet Palace Master stuttered, and he then explained, Jian Wushuang, this is a misunderstanding. Our 7-Planet Palace never once thought of provoking Lineage of Star, nor do we have the guts or capability to do so. You save your bullshit to explain yourself to the higher-ups in Lineage of Star. Now you have 2 options before you. Either you give your all and defeat me, or I'll kill you and exterminate 7-Planet Palace. You can make your own decision. Jian Wushuang sounded cold. On the way there, Jian Wushuang had thought clearly. He fought to save Lineage of Star's reputation. However, Hall Master Yuan also told him to display his power. As he had already decided to display his power, he might as well make a scene. So what if he defeated Ling Dan? His goal was 7-Planet Palace Master. He wanted to challenge a real god. Hearing what Jian Wushuang had said, the 7-Planet Palace Master's face grew grave. 7-Planet Palace Master, as you're not moving, I will not be courteous. Jian Wushuang said, and his figure immediately turned illusionary. Wow. A sword shadow suddenly wreaked havoc next to 7-Planet Palace Master and slashed towards 7-Planet Palace Master's head. 7-Planet Palace Master's face changed and he moved backwards to dodge the sword light. Then, Jian Wushuang dashed forward and lifted the tip of Blood Mountain sword in his hand. In the void before him, there were 3 crimson snowflakes. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 3 sword lights aimed in between 7-Planet Palace Master's eyebrows, throat, and his heart at the same time. Every angle was extremely critical. 7-Planet Palace Master moved his body and made a narrow escape from the 3 sword lights. 7-Planet Palace Master, why aren't you moving? Jian Wushuang wielded his sword again as he roared. If you do not try your best to kill me, I will kill you without hesitation. You have no choice. Jian Wushuang's roar reverberated in 7-Planet Palace Master's ears and his face grew grave. Then, there was madness that flashed through his eyes. Rumble! Boundless aura that only a real god expert could give out exploded from 7-Planet Palace Master's body. 7-Planet Palace Master finally wanted to fight back. Looking at the scene, Jian Wushuang's eyes brightened. Chapter 1491, Fighting a Real God. Chapter 1491, Fighting a Real God. A real god. Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists tightly and his eyes glowed with excitement. He had fought with real gods before. Moreover, 10 of them had fallen by his hands. However, the real gods were those within the sky sword prison. Hence, their divine power was restricted to a great extent and they were unable to display the true abilities of a real god. But at that very moment, the seven-planet palace master in front of him was not under any restrictions. It would be the real fighting capabilities of a real god. Jian Wushuang also wished to experience exactly how strong a genuine real god was. Let's fight! With a shout, Jian Wushuang's figure changed magically and 9 shadows appeared immediately. The 9 shadows plunged across the void with amazing speed and appeared beside the seven-planet palace master. At the same time, they also swung their swords. Crimson lightning came forth at once. Real god's unique skill, crimson light. The seven-planet palace master's eyes squinted slightly. A great amount of divine power moved about and became a thick layer of black light on his body. The black light was like black armor which covered the seven-planet palace master's body completely. At the same time, a black long gun appeared on the seven-planet palace master's hands. By cocking the gun and exerting strength upon it, the seven-planet master shot the black light directly. Boom! It was as if the universe around the area was affected by the black long gun and a giant, jaw-dropping black vortex appeared abruptly. The seven-planet palace master also used the unique skill of a real god. Moreover, he had also unleashed his full abilities. Go head-to-head. A head-on confrontation. Bam! The pitch-black long gun and the crimson lightning clashed and the space broke into pieces. The terrifying divine power then became shockwaves which swept past all areas in a frenzy. This was due to the head-on collision which generated reverse shockwaves and they headed toward Jian Wushuang and the seven-planet palace master at the same time. Jian Wushuang's body shook and he resisted the reverse shockwave easily. What? The seven-planet palace master's expression changed. At that moment, he could not help but retreat a step. It was this retreated step that caused the power of the seven-planet palace master's long gun to be utterly defeated. He is merely a universe god. In a head-to-head battle with one another, he is actually stronger than me? The seven-planet palace master raised his head and looked at Jian Wushuang with shock. He did not know that Jian Wushuang was a universe god of the second heaven. However, due to his inverse cultivation, his divine power had already achieved the peak of a universe god of the third heaven. Moreover, he also possessed the blood feather reincarnation armor. By activating the secret skill of the blood feather reincarnation armor, the power that he had released was not very different from a normal real god. The most important thing was still his comprehension of the reincarnation doctrine. His comprehension of the reincarnation doctrine had already reached the stage where he could clear the first level of the doctrine palace. But what about the seven-planet palace master? He belonged to real gods of the lowest end and he had never comprehended even a small portion of power of the heaven way before. With the amplification by the reincarnation power, the full power that Jian Wushuang had released was a tad stronger than the seven-planet palace master. On the battlefield, Jian Wushuang grinned. His blood mountain sword followed along the pitch-black long gun of the seven-planet palace master. By slanting his sword slightly, he struck the seven-planet palace master's hands like lightning. The seven-planet palace master was so astonished that he shuddered. Although he wanted to retreat, with a random stride of Jian Wushuang, he appeared in front of the seven-planet palace master. This martial art motion. The seven-planet palace master was astounded. Jian Wushuang had already launched his next attack. His body had changed into a sharp sword. His body served as the back of the sword whilst the blood mountain sword served as the edge of the sword. Whoosh! With a simple front pounce, the sword light came forth like the sharp claws of a ferocious beast. Clang! The seven-planet palace master swung his gun continuously to block with difficulty. However, Jian Wushuang turned his body nimbly and the long sword headed straight for the seven-planet palace master's head. Clang, 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 clang. Intense sounds of collision resounded across the void. Jian Wushuang had either changed into a sharp sword or a ferocious beast. By combining his transformation with the secret skill flowing light phantom, He displayed his ability to fight in close combat. It must be known that he had used a few thousand years to hone his close combat abilities in the Sky Sword prison. Moreover, he could still combine it with the flowing light phantom, a secret skill of the martial art motion. By using them together, it could be said to be stunning. Too fast. His speed is too fast. His sword principles are also fast. One stroke after another, continuous and unending. This does not give me any opportunity at all. Moreover, his body is abnormal. A real god like me actually cannot find an opportunity to counterattack. The seven-planet palace master's face was filled with fright. He had already displayed the strongest abilities that he had as a real god. His divine power and unique skill, as well as his gun motion, had been unleashed thoroughly. In spite of that, he was still being pushed back by Jian Wushuang. Yes, he was being pushed back. Moreover, he was pushed back in all areas. The seven-planet palace master retreated continuously whilst being pushed back, and he was in an extremely difficult position, to the point that he did not have any chance to counterattack. On the sidelines of the Heavenly Fire Summit, millions of cultivators were looking at the fighting scene with awe. A universe god was fighting with a real god. However, the result was a one-sided match with the real god being pushed back. How is this possible? Ah! The seven-planet palace master was infuriated by Jian Wushuang's crazy suppression. With a furious howl, the black armor that the seven-planet palace master wore grew abruptly. In no time, it had transformed into a black, giant exotic beast. The black exotic beast had 3 heads and it was extremely hideous. The seven-planet palace master's eyes turned completely back. The long gun in his hands was brimming with appalling power and he cocked the gun. Dark heavenly song. Boom! The whole universe turned completely black. Not even the slightest bit of light could be seen. The long gun that had been cocked abruptly became the only focal point of the universe. It was extraordinarily powerful and earth-shaking. "Ha, you bring it on." Jian Wushuang laughed loudly and an enormous amount of soul power erupted, forming a giant golden divine ape. As soon as the golden divine ape appeared, it roared fiercely. The giant longsword in its hands followed Jian Wushuang's movement and was swung abruptly at that very moment. Among the 3 real gods' unique skills that Jian Wushuang created, the skill with the greatest power. 9th Heaven Stroke. A nemesis sword which carried supreme sword essence descended again. The nemesis sword and the black long gun clashed. Boom! The universe shook. The minds of everyone by the sidelines of the battlefield could not help but ring with the terrifying sound. After the sound had disappeared, the seven-planet palace master gave a groan and some blood came out of the corners of his mouth. He retreated in an extremely sorry state. As for Jian Wushuang, although he had experienced an extremely strong shockwave, the shockwave was weakened by his blood feather reincarnation armor. By the time it reached his body, it was unable to affect him at all. He still stood firmly in the void and did not move.